Good evening. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Education on Tuesday, November 13th. The Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. Blanc will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right. Please join us for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Mr. Pettiford, I believe you have a presentation for us this evening.
I do. Can we get forward? Wow, that's quick. All right, fantastic. Well, good evening, everyone. Several weeks ago, actually, nearly a month ago, the board had made an inquiry on two specific areas of concern that not only of areas that, shall I say, plague the Jefferson County school system, but is a national issue. One is, where are all the teachers? And the second being, why are we unable to fill substitutes or find substitutes to fill our schools? So what I'm going to walk you through tonight is some statistics and some national data. And what I've done is I've been very thorough in the packet that I've provided you separately, and I've put lots of supporting documentation for your own perusal. And you can go through that at your leisure. And if you have questions, you can certainly subsequently follow up with us. We'd be happy to respond to whatever questions you have. But in the interest of time tonight, I'm going to abbreviate the presentation and just give you a few examples of the national data that I've provided you, and then kind of walk through the rest of the data locally. So without further ado, the big question is, substitute teacher and subservice personnel, a national challenge requiring a local solution. The current state of the local economy here in Jefferson County is not unique, but however, according to Workforce West Virginia, it says that Jefferson County seasonally unadjusted unemployment rate of 3% was the lowest in the state, followed by Doddridge, Monongalia, and Pendleton counties at 3.4%. Intrinsically, what that means is whenever there's low unemployment, that means that people have other options and lots of other opportunities. And so when you get to the issue of economics and you talk about scarcity, you start talking about what options and opportunity costs exist between one opportunity and the other, and that also includes jobs. So why are we here? We're here tonight to talk about the declining interest in the profession. Now, these are some statistics that we've gathered nationally from a national association, personnel directors across the country. One of the leading organizations, American Association of State Colleges, also contributed to this particular statistic. But it says, noted in the report, that deans of colleges and education said the number one reason for enrollment drop was the perception of teaching as an undesirable career. Declining enrollment is another major issue in teaching. Training programs between 2008 and 2009 and 2012 and 2013 school years, enrollment in teacher preparation programs decreased by more than 30%. And that specifically is addressing areas of special ed, math, and science, were the key areas where this was found. Between 2005 and 6 and 2014 and 16, degrees in education declined by nearly 15%. There's a disconnect between training and the district's needs. In other words, as students were coming out of schools with these degrees and what was needed to be in the classroom, we seem to be having a gap. Okay? Not unlike high school students now, they'll go off to college, and by the time they graduate 4 years from this point in time, whatever they were studying has already changed and shifted. The Chronicle of Higher Education, developed by researchers such as UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, over 5 decades, took a survey of the nation's incoming freshman class. As you can see, from 1973, the indication of probable field of study being education has continued to decline over that period of time all the way through 2016. So what about teacher retention and turnover? In 2012, about 16% of teachers, 500,000 speaking nationally, left their district. Half of these folks left the profession altogether. About 30% of new teachers leave the occupation within the first 5 years. Teacher turnover is highest in the South at 16.7 and lowest in the Northeast at about 10.3. Teachers of color have higher turnover rates at 19 and 15% versus 15%. So it's even higher in that particular class of teacher. 51% of teachers report more manageable workloads, and 53% cited better working conditions as their primary reasons for leaving the profession. And as you know, as of March of last year, and I'll be happy to share this with you as we move towards the new year, we've been collecting direct data from people leaving the district and collecting this type of information as well. So we'll have some statistics to compare against even this as we move into the new year. 91% of millennials expect to stay in a job for less than 3 years. So when you count that factor in as well, that's compounding the issue of why people are not staying in the job. So now we're looking at the fact that there are less people going into the profession. We're also into a gig economy. We're also dealing with millennials that are typically going to have 7 to 8 different type of jobs during their career, and you compound the issue. And they'll have 15 to 20 jobs over the course of their working lives. Now, let's take a look at some of the national data and then take a look at it at the district level. The national data says that we spend about $2.2 billion per year on teacher attrition, $4.9 billion per year for replacing teachers who transfer schools. At the district level, we're talking about an average of $4,366 per teacher in a small rural district, and for those in a large district, about $17,872 per teacher in a very large district. Now, as you all know, you've seen statistics on the cost per student that school systems typically spend on students. Just looking at that number alone, notwithstanding the fact that it may be in large districts like a California or New York or someplace like that, $17,000 per teacher is in some cases more than we spend on a student per year. Teacher pay. Well, will money solve our problems? There's a wonderful slide I'm going to bring your attention to here, this right here, where it says, how does your state compare and how does your school compare? I'm going to invite each of you to go visit this site. You can plug in West Virginia and our biography is there. It says that West Virginia was the national leader with regard to teacher pay issues in this country. And then it walks us through a little scenario in terms of what we were asking and what we got. And what will be staggering to you is that once you put in what we achieved in terms of a pay raise for teachers in West Virginia is still staggeringly behind national averages. In fact, when you couple in and take into effect adjustment for cost of living, it equates to basically a 14% gap compared to the national standard. It actually shows that they've had a decrease in pay. So what about our health care? Well, all I need to say is PEIA, enough said, right? Mm-hmm. That is a big concern in this state and one of the biggest challenges that we have with regard to retaining teachers, because if people can't get health care, basic health care for their family, and or get the services that they need within the areas in which they live, and PEIA coverage does not cover areas outside of that, where they would typically have their doctors and physicians, that's problematic. People are not going to be inclined to want to be there and take advantage of those benefits. Data is clear that we have a problem, but the solution is slow. It does not help with class size and not having supplies. You guys have seen the statistics that we've shared with you. It's not uncommon for a teacher to take money out of their own pocket to fund things in their own classroom for classroom materials and books and things like that. We don't happen to have those same kinds of issues here in Jefferson County, but it's not an unusual story across the nation. I'm pleased to report that in 2017's best and worst, West Virginia is not in any one of these categories. That's the good news. The bad news is we're still on the list. And if we were probably looking at something, while in March of 2018, we were listed by MSN as being the #1 school district in the state of West Virginia, the bad news is we are still low compared to pay and benefits across the country. Okay? And as you can see from here, here's some of the lowest annual salaries adjusted for cost of living, some of the highest, some of the lowest projected teacher turnover, and some of the highest projected teacher turnover. Look at the District of Columbia and Maryland, neighbors of ours, are in those top 51 areas. Well, what can we do about it? At a very high level, these are 7 strategies for recruitment and hiring that have been taken a look at that are considered best practices. And they include embracing data and using data to make smarter decisions and to be able to adjust as you need to based on that data. Grow your own teachers and leaders, and those are some things that you know we're already doing here in the district with regard to our exemplary leadership program and coaching and mentoring programs that we've established for teachers within our district. Expand our online recruiting efforts. We're going to talk a little bit more about what we might do to expand that tonight and some of our recommendations to you. We can leverage partnerships. That includes partnerships with our universities, some other local institutions, and of course, private industry. That also may mean taking a look at some of the policies that we currently have in place that are not conducive for bringing on people from the private sector. I was chatting with a teacher this evening. We've been having a dialogue over the last couple of weeks. She has a degree, a PhD in immunology. But unfortunately, the state of West Virginia doesn't recognize that doctorate and allow her to receive credit and pay for that degree. I have a challenge with that. And if we're trying to attract people from the outside and encourage them, people who would not normally take a look at this field but would be interested in it, if we have barriers like that that prevent them from even stepping across the line, that's a challenge. So we need to take a look at policy and how we can accommodate those kinds of things. Recruitment stipends, leadership training. We've been talking about staff development for some time here, and we've got some really exciting things that are moving forward in the district with regard to leadership and training overall, and building a community and communicating a brand. We are trying to make sure that we create a Jefferson experience for teachers when they come across the line to us or they visit here for the first time. I'm very pleased to report that this year we were very successful. We had a couple of outside visitors from as far as Texas and even some folks from Arizona this year. And as you know, we actually hired a principal last year from Arizona and came back home to the Shepherdstown area. But I was very pleased that we were actually able to get a teacher who had long tenure in Texas school, came up here for a conference, stopped by the school district, asked about what it might take to get licensed here. We had a half-an-hour conversation, and the next thing we knew, he was being hired by our school, and he's at one of our local middle schools now, and is in place. But it's those types of experiences that create the opportunity for people to want to come to your district. So one of the next logical things that we want to take a look at is, well, what are we doing at the local level in terms of a process? So I'm going to invite Mr. Brian Cooley, who's our human resource facilitator, to come up and chat a little bit and walk you through the process that we go through for both hiring substitute teachers and service personnel. Mr. Cooley? Okay.
Good evening, members of the board, Dr. Gibson. It's a pleasure to be here. Mrs. Candace Breeden deals with the substitute teacher process, and she has here this information that she would like for me to share with you, that for a substitute teacher permit, a minimum of a bachelor's degree, and they must also provide official transcripts. If the degree is not in education, they must complete the substitute teacher training. And this can be done through EPIC in Martinsburg. There's a fee required, or through the Department of Ed website, and it is free of charge. They have to do 6 hours of observations in schools, and that's part of the process. They have to submit an application and $35 for a short-term permit and $50 for a long-term permit. And fingerprinting is required, $44.50. Okay, so she reviews the applications from the substitute teacher postings. She contacts the qualified applicants for interviews. She gives them directions on making the application for the substitute permit to the Department of Ed. And then once that's completed, they need to have the fingerprinting done and so on. Then she recommends them to be hired by you. Then once they are hired, they have training on SEMS, and then their photo is taken for the badge, and then they are activated for calls. Okay, this is my part here, and this is my most enjoyable part of human relations, dealing with the whole idea of human resources and hiring substitute service personnel. At one time, 38 years ago, I was a substitute, so I understand the importance of really doing a good job in recruiting people to help fill in when others are not here. So what I do for substitute service personnel is that I screen the applications from the SearchSoft. And what happens is I'm looking especially for aides, cooks, custodians, and secretaries. And I focus predominantly on their prior work experience, their volunteer work, their background information, especially related to law enforcement issues, which is very important, and confidential references. With the aides, I look especially for any work experience that they have with children. I explain to them it's very important for you to put that in your application. I've contacted many applicants who want to be substitute aides who don't have anything listed to say, if you have experience, put it in, because we really want to know, what have you done with children? It doesn't necessarily always have to be professional. It can be volunteer, whether it's in the school or coaching or cheerleading, coach or so on. It can be with sports. It can be babysitting, childcare, or just being a parent. And I'm looking for all of those different areas because I want them to be successful when they go into a classroom, that they won't freeze. And we want them to work well with children and with teachers. For cooks, I look to see, do they have any type of food handler experience? If they don't, do they like cooking? Do they feel they can follow recipes? Will they mind running a dishwasher? That type of thing. And for custodians, any type of cleaning experience in particular. Okay, but we do offer some training, so that is mentioned as well. Okay. I do form then classes of applicants and then contact them for interviews, and it's a chunk of time. Then the typical interview, I spend about 30 minutes for the interview because I really want to have the substitute understand what he or she is doing and to be very transparent. We discuss some common substitute myths, such as some of them think, oh, I'm going to come in and work every single day, or I'm going to get benefits. No, that's not what happens, but they need to understand that up front and be very transparent, so they get a handout about that. I do have a series of interview questions that they're asked. We do go through the job description in detail, and they sign off that they don't have any issues with the demands of the position. Again, is to be transparent. We do go through and discuss, and they have a handout that I give them, the pre-board approval checklist, and these are items that must be completed or submitted to me before their name comes before you or before Dr. Gibson as superintendent sign-off, because we want to make sure you don't have to backpedal. We want to make sure that everything is done before they're submitted to you for approval, which includes their fingerprinting and their copy of their educational record and so on. Then I also will schedule competency testing and training sessions before they leave the interview. Okay, the competency testing sessions are usually held within 1 week of the interview, so we can keep the process moving. The aides have to attend an orientation training session at the bus garage so that they actually get the training they need from the bus personnel, and I also do the first 2 hours of the training dealing with special ed and safety and medication. Okay, and then the files of the applicants undergo regular audits, and I notify them of any outstanding items they may have, and these are temporary files that I create. Once they have everything, they come to you for approval, then we scan all those items electronically. Once all items have been completed and submitted to me, okay, their names are given to you or to Dr. Gibson for sign-off. Once their paperwork is completed, the SEMS training is completed for how to handle the electronic system. Photograph is taken for the badge, and then they are ready for calls. For the Transportation Department, for hiring sub-bus operators, the process is similar except for the following. They need to complete the West Virginia Bus Operator Classroom Training, which is 40 hours minimum. Completion of online West Virginia Bus Operator Certification Test, then the completion of the Behind the Wheel training, 12 hours. So you can see it takes quite a bit of time to become a substitute bus operator. Okay, let me share some data with you. You may be interested in this here. Put that down. Okay, since August, because I'm a 220-day employee, so I returned August 1st. Okay, since August, 181 contacts for interviews have occurred. And these are for substitute aides, cooks, and custodians in particular. So 181 contacts for interviews. Out of those 181 contacts, 91 interviews have occurred. That's kind of a staggering number if you think about it, 91 interviews since August. And out of those 91, 26 have actually been hired for substitute aides, cooks, and custodians. As you can see here, I brought this on purpose. When I was a teacher, I used to love to use props because they make a good impact. But these are the files of applicants who have not returned things to me yet in regard to getting their name to you. I do audit these. I go through them carefully every 2 weeks and send them emails or contact them personally via telephone. Sometimes it doesn't matter which contact. I'm still working to get everything done so I can submit names so people can start working. So people are still interested, but sometimes they have not gone to do the background check or the fingerprinting, or they still owe me their diploma or something of that food handler card for the cook. So there's a few things that I keep track of so that we can get them approved and get them working. But I did want to show this to you because this is just a huge amount of people who still owe me things. Okay. So that's my section.
Now what we'll do is take a look at some year-over-year comparison statistics relative to our fill rates. What you have before you here is a comparison chart. This has been brought to you by our partnership with Talent Ed, and there's a module that we use called Discover Analytics, and they were able to help us through their consultancy put together these statistical facts and figures for you tonight. This is Jefferson County for 2017. Now, of course, 2017-18 is a completed school year, so this is our average for the entire year. And 2018-19 school year represents as of September 30, so first month. And I would caution you with the following caveat, that the first month of any school year is not indicative of the rest of the school year. So those numbers can be slightly deceiving, and you'll see that later on as we get into the more granular data and examine that. But when we compare ourselves, Jefferson County, to our neighboring like size and similar types of other districts in the region, you can see that from a fill rate perspective in 2017, we were at 90.2% overall as a district, and our neighbors in that same year were at about 92.1%. In 2018-19, we were at 92% fill rate, average overall, and our competitors were at about 92%, so we were on par with regard to our fill rates overall at a district level. Total number of absences cumulatively for the year 2017-18 was 27,453. Those represent the number of jobs. So those were substitute jobs that people filled. For others, 35,000 cumulatively for those other three districts on average, and about 4,702 comparable to ours for this year ending September 30th, 2018. The percent created with no notice, these are the number of jobs that were created with no notice given to us at all. And what's particularly interesting as you read this is as you go from no notice to a day of notice to a week of notice to a week plus of notice, the numbers get better. They get better. When we know someone is going to be out, we can plan for it. And the easy way to go take a look at that is to look at the fill rate with no notice. We're at 91% in the first year of this year. We were at 80% overall in 2017-18, where our competitors were more at about 89 last year. Okay? Our fill rate on the day of notice is at around 70%, 74, 76%. It hasn't changed much between last year and this year. When we have at least a week's notice, look how progressively our numbers go up. We're at 94%, which is pretty much on par with our competitors as well. 95% here and 96%. And then our fill rate, when we have more than a week's notice, we're able to fill our jobs at 100% of the time. Now, what this is going to tell you is that as we drive through the data here tonight and take a look at this on a more granular level, and what's really interesting when you start looking at the granular data is the reasons behind why people are not here, why they're absent, why they're not coming to work. And many of the symptoms that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation, which talks about the elements of people not wanting to not be in the profession, not coming to jobs, being stressed out, finding alternative options that are less stressful than the ones they have in teaching. These things lead to the same symptoms for people who are currently in the profession and they don't want to be here or can't be here because of other conflicting issues. And that's driving those absences. And then what's happening as a result is we start taking a look at the substitute pools that we have. The average number of working substitutes that we had here in Jefferson County for this year was 223, 288 for our surrounding districts. Last year, cumulatively, we had about 242 in the 17-18 school year and 344 compared to our neighboring districts. So what that's really saying is that the pool that we have, it's almost the 80-20 rule. 80% of the work is being done by 20% of the people in our pool. And our pool is stressed. We have fewer people to spread the jobs across. So we're straining the existing substitute pool, but we're struggling to get people in the substitute pool. Okay? Some of these larger districts, just by sheer volume alone, have a bigger pool to spread those jobs across. One of the other things to think about too as well when you start looking at those leading indicators is the average number of hours that those jobs are. And you'll see that in a few slides beyond this. The average weekly hours worked per sub is about 19 this year as of September 30th. And last year the average job was about 18. So as you can see, compared to the other districts nearby, our subs are working longer durations of time and have longer jobs, but again, they're stressing those few substitutes that we do have working longer jobs, whereas there's so many in their pool over here, they're able to work fewer jobs and less hours. All right, let's take a look now at fill rates and jobs classification groups. Now these are, what we did is we extracted data out for canceled jobs. In other words, I was going to be out, but I decided not to be out. We took that data out. And where there was no sub required, we took out and extracted that data as well. So the net result is grand totals here. The total number of jobs, and this is ending as of October 31st of 2018. So the first 2 months of the school year. What we have here is a grand total of 6830 jobs. The number unfilled was 724. Our fill rate was approximately 89.4%. That same comparison last year, during that same period of time, we were at about 90.5% fill rate, but the number of jobs that we had unfilled were a lot less. But you can see that the number of jobs total was almost down by 600, was up almost 600 jobs from last year to this year. In the professional category, you can see as well that we had 4,118 jobs of that 6,830, and 2,712 of those were service. And as you can kind of see here, and indicated by red being on the low end of the spectrum, that our service area is particularly difficult for us to try to fill, and especially when we get down to less notice. When we look at 2018-19, the number of jobs grand total for professional and service, and compare those between 17-18 and 18-19, you can see here the comparisons. Not too much of a difference here. Again, our fill rates are worse in service than they are overall with professional. And then we start getting down into the details, taking a look at, and in this area here where we have no notice, 0 to 2 hours notice, 2 to 4 hours, 4 to 8, 8 to 12, 12 to 24, 1 to 2 days, 2 to 4 days, 4 to 7 days. As you go across and take a look at the data, the numbers become staggering in terms of the percentage of fill based on the more notice that we have. What that would suggest is that inherently, what you might have is a policy where people feel, if I have to use sick leave, I can't tell you I'm going to be sick next Friday and put that in. So I wait till the night before or day of to call that in. And subsequently what happens is then we struggle to try to find someone to fill that job. And if it goes out for service and it's calling, it's only getting someone at 50% of the time. Okay? The length of job by classification group. Duration, again, 69% of our jobs are typically 7 to 8 hours in duration or more. So people are getting at least a full day's worth of work out of our subs. And in this particular case, when you, take a look here at compared to last year, same type of statistics. We were at 48% when we had 7 days or more, 49% this year. And there's an uptick in professional, 59% fill rate compared to 54 last year. And for service, 35% we're doing not as good this year as we were last year. And again, this is just a little bit more data, digging down a little deeper in terms of the duration of jobs. Again, you can review this at your leisure. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you thereafter and talk more about this. I think the big takeaway here is legislatively there's some things that we can do, we can change structurally to impact our fill rates. Okay? I've put on here a few samples. As you know, your package is much thicker than this. These are just a couple of other state legislative changes that have been made across the country that school districts have done to be a little bit more creative about how they do things. State School Board passed a resolution allowing districts to hire adjunct teachers without certification to work half-time. The minimum requirements is a high school diploma, GED, and a clean background check. And as you know, our neighbors to the north or south, depending on which direction you're going, over in Virginia, all you need is an associate's degree, and you can be a substitute teacher. In West Virginia, however, you're required to have a bachelor's degree. Okay. Scholarships in the next fiscal budget to get more math and science teachers. In Arizona, new legislation signed into law that allows teachers to be hired with no formal teaching training as long as they have 5 years of experience in fields relevant to the subject that they're teaching. Aspiring Teacher Academy introduced last year. For every year they promise to teach, they get a year off of their tuition. Pretty sweet deal. 6-day teacher walkout, 20% teacher raise over the next 3 years. An additional initiative to fund both salaries and operations, and there's a petition in effect for that now. Only 6 states, Arizona, Florida, Hawaii, Mississippi, and Missouri, and Nevada, offer full teacher license reciprocity for all eligible fully licensed teachers. In these 6 states, fully licensed out-of-state teachers, regardless of experience, are immediately eligible to receive a standard teaching license and are subject to few, if any, additional requirements. I cannot say that for West Virginia. Here are some local recommendations that we're bringing forward to you, and what we're seeking from you tonight is to get some sense of which direction you would like us to pursue. With limited resources and limited staff, we want to make sure that we're focusing in on what your priorities are. So some of the suggestions that we have is to make some legislative change to allow us to put all leave in a single category and not require folks to separate sick and leave without cause so that there's no incentive to wait. a proposed attendance bonus that might serve as a reimbursement for unused days at the end of the year that's half the cost of perhaps a sub. I have attached an Exhibit A for you that you can take a look at how other counties throughout the state of West Virginia compare relative to that initiative. Use of temporary staff augmentation services to build a bench of ready, willing, and able professional sub-teachers. There are professional staffing systems out there that are available that work with professional districts and help to, they have their own incentives within the company, and the apparent cost to a district is about 30% of whatever that teacher's pay may be for the day as the cost to have that extra body available. Establish and maintain a dedicated recruitment budget and personnel to do that. We do not have a recruiter on board here in Jefferson County Schools. The closest we've come to doing recruitment is being lucky enough to win Teacher of the Year and being able to send her on some missions to do recruiting for us, and that was last year. But we don't go to job fairs, we don't have a budget for that, and we don't have a dedicated recruiter that just does recruiting. And improve salary and benefits options locally. And again, we can get creative with a number of different ways that we could look at that and things that we could do. I'm available to respond to any questions that you might have right now. Dr. Gibson may also want to chime in with regard to some observations as well.
Thank you.
Good?
I have some questions. Do you know on average how many substitutes we have, how many long-term substitutes we have, and how many are like day-to-day?
We have approximately 325 subs. I do not know the specific breakdown of those, but we'd be happy to get you that information.
Okay, so if we have 11 long-term subs, like at Washington High School, to fill those positions, could we post those positions? I mean, keep it posted until, a certified person applies for the position?
We do that, as a matter of fact. Oftentimes we will, when we've gone into the first 2 months of the school year, trying to settle in and get someone situated in the classroom, if we've been unsuccessful at filling it with a certified teacher, we will have the principals or building administrators identify a long-term sub option as closely aligned to the subject matter as we can. We continue to keep the posting up for the full-time position during the entire duration. What we try to also do is, if we're successful at getting those candidates to apply and be successful, the challenge is if they're already in West Virginia, there's a caveat that whatever the other district is in West Virginia is not going to be inclined to release that teacher from their contract. So our next best option is to get someone who's coming from the outside, either Virginia, Maryland, or some other state. And then you've got to take into account the issue of reciprocity, because then they've got to go through the process of making sure that they have certification and reciprocity here in West Virginia to be able to be fully certified.
Okay. So there are 11 positions at Washington High School that are filled with long-term subs, and we don't have those positions posted. So I was just wondering if that could be a recruitment tool to let people know that these positions are open. This is November. There might be December graduates from colleges. Mm-hmm. So is that something that we can do?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question that we can do that. And typically what would happen this late into the semester is that if we got candidates for that, they would be looking at a transition into the next semester.
But, yes. So for could we find out, like I know there's 8 long-term subs at Jefferson.
Yes.
And those categories are not listed here as an open position. So I'm just thinking of recruitment type, things that we can do to say, hey, we have positions that are open and we'd like for you to apply, especially if you're certified.
Well, in West Virginia, we're typically required at a minimum to post for at least 5 days. You cannot post a job indefinitely. It has to have an end date. And so if you were to post a job, it's kind of a hit or miss. at this juncture and you posted it, say, for 10 days or 15 days, you might go that 3-week period, and if we have what we call blackout periods, where we have next week we're going to be on a holiday, so there's 5 days there that the person, we can't count that as part of the open time for showing the job, because people can't necessarily apply if they're not physically aware that the job is available. So then now you're extending that period of time out even further. What then happens is once you close that, you go through those applicants, and if you still come back to zero, now you're back to where you were before. And that's typically what we have found, is that we're going through that process and that exercise pretty regularly, where we'll go through that and down select on the pool, and there'll be no certified people in the pool. There may even be people who are not even qualified to be teachers, and that's the challenge. And so we're better off with the long-term sub that's there, but even to promote the job outside of that, it's not having any net effect.
But so you're saying that we can post, but we can only post for 10 days, is what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is we have to post at a minimum of 5 days, and we typically do that. And we go through a series of those at the beginning of the semester, and we go through various scenarios where we may post 2 or 3 times, going through that same cycle and process, evaluating the applications. And after you've done that 20 times through 50 jobs, you're going to get to the point where you recognize that effort is not netting anything at this point.
But it's not. Is it costing us anything to
Just time and energy that we could be focusing on other issues. Yes.
So I guess what you're saying is we can't, let's say we have an opening at the middle school or high school or whatever, and we have a long-term sub in there right now.
Yes.
We can't go ahead and post, we have a math teacher opening, it's posted until May 25th or whatever the last day of school is, because then you can't close it until May 25th. Is that
If we
correct?
advertise it for that,
Right.
that is correct. We would
Is
be
there a
closing
way
it then.
to post it, until filled, as
No.
opposed to a date?
No, unfortunately, West Virginia law does not allow you to post positions until filled, like Virginia. You have to have an end date. So, for example, in our substitute pool, what we do is July 1 to June 30th. Successfully open for the entire year. And then what we do is basically go into the pool and do what we just said. We go in, we take a lot, 20 people, we go through those 20 people, we evaluate them, scan them, process them, screen them. Some provide the feedback, some don't. As you saw from the statistics Mr. Cooley provided, how many people did you go through? 90-some people?
91.
90?
Contacted 181, interviewed 91.
And what were some of the net results?
Well, hired 26.
So less than 14%.
Right, but substitutes are different because you can pull them in batches and you can hire 600 of them if you want.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, if you have a specific position as a teacher that you're trying to fill in a specific classroom, you can't, do it from June to July because you
Correct.
can't. I mean, it's one specific person that you're looking for.
Yes.
So is there a better way that we can do it so that we can have those positions open just in case, somebody moves to the area or, moves from, Morgan County or wherever they're coming from, and they're not tied to another system right now, where they could look at our page and say, oh, well, they've got these openings. Or if you had a graduate that graduated last May and took some time off to find themselves or whatever they did, and they decided, okay, well, now I really have to find a job and start my career and my life.
Sure.
I don't know what the solution is, but obviously not having them posted does create a problem because it doesn't appear that we're looking for people to replace the people.
Gotcha.
So Ms. Ropers, and to your point, would it be possible, much as we do with subs, because it's generic, we leave it open simply to let people know that we're looking for substitutes? If per Ms. Ropers and Ms. Skinner's point, if we were to post a July 1 to June 30th and simply said teachers, like we are looking for certified teachers, and we just said certified teachers, and then boom, we got an application for somebody who wants to be specifically a math teacher at Washington High School, and we said, okay, now let's post up math teacher for 5 days, we'll take your application for that, pull it back down. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And then that way there's always a teacher, just generic teacher posting open, and anybody who wants to be any kind of teacher applies, instead of, to your point, if we have 80 long-term subs in the district, us posting up, taking down every 5 days is an administrative time suck for people. But we just leave a general teacher open all year long, and then when somebody applies and we have something specific, boom, we post up 5 days down and we interview them.
Yeah, I don't think we would have a challenge with that at all, as long as we are consistent and administratively with how we deal with that and we treat it. I don't think council would even have any objections to us developing a methodology internally so that we could do that.
Is that a legislative issue that we cannot keep it up till filled?
That's correct. That's a code issue, personnel code,
So
18A.
Can you do us a favor as well? Can you look at that specific code? Because it may be that we can go to the legislature and, get this done to say, and all it has to say is, instead of it has to be a certain date, maybe you can just add, a few words, or until filled to a current law, and then it allows us to do either one that we need to do, and they stay out of our business, and we get our job done.
I think
And
that's a
so,
fantastic idea.
if you can give us the exact, we can add that to the legislative agenda and see if we can hammer that even in December or whenever we need to get it done. But even if we can lay the groundwork in December to try to get it done in February.
Sure, that sounds like a great idea.
And I can see where they may have issue with until filled, but if it could be the minimum of 5 days and then until filled, because they're not going to want you to, come up with a job description. No, I'm going to hire you for that job, put it up for 3 hours, take it down, you're the only applicant, and you got the job.
Right.
So it could be, open until, for 10 days and then until filled, or, however they need to word it. But obviously that's out of our hands right now. If we could do a workaround with just a generic teacher opening, that would at least get us something for now.
Right.
And could we also do, maybe just announce when there's going to be like postings, like for December graduates, perhaps we say September 15th to October 15th, we'll be posting upcoming jobs. And people get used to looking at our site to see if this is something that they might want to apply for when they graduate or when they move to the area.
Sure.
Something like that, just to kind of let people know.
And we could let neighboring colleges know when that might be going up their teacher ed programs. So we might grab some people there at mid-semester.
Are you suggesting that we would use the website and just post it there on our basic webpage?
Or however you want
No,
to.
I'm only asking because as some of the things we talked about, we really don't have an advertising budget. And so if that's something that we want to consider funding, then that's something we could certainly take a look at for taking care of those kinds of things.
Yeah. I'm looking at the website now, and yeah, if you could put it on the website.
Yeah. See, that's free. But to get it out and get the word out to folks, again, if it's just your webpage, you're depending on people to hopefully come. But if you want to promote it, then you've got to do something beyond that to bring people to the webpage.
Do we know if any of, whether it's Shepherd, WVU, any teaching colleges in the state of West Virginia, do we know if any of them charge for us to send that to the head of the education department in every college, and it's consistent every semester at a certain time? Hey, check out our open postings, and so that they can then post that up, or we would send a flyer from us to hear, hey, just put this up in your, in your classrooms, in your department areas, whatever. Like if we did that consistently, I don't know that would be a cost for us either as far as marketing budget.
The materials themselves would probably be the only cost. I don't foresee any of our strategic partners in terms of those universities, because they all work with us and we actually do placements for them. But as you know, West Virginia University has discontinued its education program. So Shepherd is our most local university that's still focusing in on education. But we do student placements, for example, as consistently as we can, and partner with new universities. At least every year there's an emerging new university that is interested in focusing and placing students in our district. And through those relationships, we've been able to forge relationships so that as we help prep them for finishing their degree, we now have active candidates. So we are exploiting that opportunity currently. But to your question, no, I don't anticipate that would be a major cost to us outside of just the materials themselves being physically distributed to the universities.
Historically, Fairmont and Concord and schools like that have been, kids have been looking for jobs quite a bit. So I think we need to try to contact those in-state teacher ed programs.
Do we know if the placement exams are a barrier to any of our applicants?
The competency exams?
Yes.
No. What happens is that I explain the process to them. For the testing session, they get a study guide, and they use that for the first 20 minutes of the testing session, and then the test is given to them. They're also given a sample test during the interview so that they understand what it looks like.
So how many in that file did not complete the placement?
None of them. Everybody here has completed their competency test.
Competency test, okay. All right, and for the professionals, do we know?
The biggest challenge we have with professionals is consistency in job application. A person may apply for a professional position and not list that they have a degree. They might apply for a professional position and say, hey, I've been applying and I applied for a particular job, and then you go out and find out they haven't applied to any job. All they did was actually start an application. So just kind of getting through that process is part of the challenge. And then in the cases where we have people who have the degrees, they are non-teaching degrees, and in some cases it's a level of performance. Well, if the state doesn't even recognize someone who has made a 2.5 or less in terms of graduation, then there's no way we're going to consider that applicant. And we might have a lot of those that are 2.4 GPAs, and so we're not considering those applicants because they wouldn't be able to maintain or get a certification.
Are we doing group trainings and like getting our subs ready? I heard you said
An
you
orientation
did
of
the
some
training.
type is what you're referring to? Yes, absolutely, yes. We have cohorts when we do what we call blitz hiring. We may start out with, say, a list of 20 potential substitute teachers, and 7 of those complete the entire process or follow up and follow through. We do find a varying number of issues that people are faced with. We have people that come through the doors that are facing homelessness. We have people that are faced with financial difficulties, and sometimes even, and certainly we find this in the coaching area, and that's considered professional too, in terms of stipend positions. People struggle with just paying the $35 fee to be recertified. So,
Is there any way that we can put a pause on the hour-long test? I forget what it's called, I don't know if it's placement or competency. If we can kind of stop doing that for a while till we build up our sub pool.
are you referring to the EPI, or what are you referring to?
When the person does an application,
Yes.
and part of it is a 72 questionnaire,
Yes. Okay, what about that now?
could we stop doing that for a while just to see if that has an effect? If our neighbors aren't doing it, we're competing, for able bodies.
Yes.
Is that possible to?
Yeah, it is. One of the things, however, that does do for us is it helps us with the hiring process in terms of saving time for principals as they're helping to evaluate applications as well. It helps to narrow their search. Instead of getting a stack of resumes, they're able to kind of see where should I focus my attention. And in addition to that, as part of our staff development initiative, what it does is it provides us with a personalized professional development plan for each person. So it doesn't matter whether we hire them as a substitute or we hire them eventually as a permanent teacher. We now have a professional development plan that we can now cater to and provide and strengthen them and grow our own. And now we have a tool to do that. Without that assessment, then we're working with nothing and we have nothing to offer them.
Right. But I'm speaking of substitutes, and since we have professional development days, is it possible that on maybe one of those days or sometime during those days that assessment can be done with all the employees, so you know where everyone stands? But those substitutes that we're trying to get acclimated into our system, if we could not make that a requirement, bring them in, and then if they become a long-term sub, then they will be part of that assessment, and we would really be able to train them and cater to their needs.
We're certainly able to take a look at what options may be available to us to suspend it for substitute teachers.
And retirees.
The only thing that I would see as an issue with that is either you've got to be consistent or you're not, because then you're going to have some people coming in, and then how are you supposed? That's going to take more man hours to track who has filled out that information, who has not filled out that information, who gets a personalized plan, who doesn't. If you have an issue then long term with a staff member that you've hired and they have an issue that you're trying to address, even for a disciplinary action. Well, I didn't get that personalized treatment, and well, this person did. Well, that wasn't given to me, so now I'm going to file a grievance against you because you didn't do the same thing for me that you did for everybody else, and then we get to keep them for yet another 60 days to 2 years and still have those issues. So I think we either have to be consistent or we don't. But what I do like that you said was, having, because one of my questions was, well, how often does training occur? Maybe having, as Mr. Cooley had said too, they do have blocks of scheduled time, or sometimes they have that. So maybe once a month, if it's consistent, it's known as, it's a hiring day. It's a big deal. It's a hiring day. It's on the website. People who are going to go see that, they can see that, and they can come in to the board office. We can, everybody fills out their paper at the same time. Everybody goes through their tests at the same time. It's very consistent. I had someone ask me that as far as the bus drivers, because they had applied for a bus driver position, not here but in another county, because they said that it attracted them because they had that. It was a, hiring for bus driver day. And so they went, and there was a room full of people, and they all went through the things together. So it wasn't so I don't feel alone, or if you had questions, there were HR people there to ask questions. The head of the bus garage was there to ask questions. So I think that might be, an idea to go, but I don't know that I would agree with. I think the level of consistency opens us up to issues down the road, in my personal opinion, by taking that away. But I wondered as well, with the bus drivers, are they paid for those 40 hours? That was another question I had.
No.
They're not?
No.
Okay, so to be a bus driver, you have to do 40 hours of training.
Minimum.
Before their name comes to us?
Yes,
That they're not paid for.
correct.
Correct.
Okay.
We have explored that with the West Virginia Department of Education, and that's another arena in which we asked about paying them for their training. And one of the issues is that the West Virginia Department of Education they forbid you from charging drivers for their CDL. So what we had talked about was hiring them, paying them a salary, and then if they agreed to work for us, they were just fine. But if they then left and went to P&G to make $18.50 an hour, that they'd have to pay us back. And the West Virginia Department of Education said you can't do that. So then we looked at, okay, well, how about if you go through the training and then you come to work for us? If you stay with us for 6 months, we'll go back, we'll just give you a bonus. That's 2 months worth of salary for when you were training. So you don't get it when you're doing it, but we give it to you on the back end. And some concern was expressed among the service personnel, because essentially we'd be given a bonus to one classification of employee and not giving it to all the other classifications of employees. So we've run into some difficulty in trying to come up with different ways to address that issue, because it is an enormous hardship. It's hard for people. Most of the time what happens is they're getting by with other jobs because they need to feed their families and take care of them, and they're trying to do their 40 hours around their job, and we're super flexible. But then what happens is it takes 4 months to get through there, because you can only come Tuesday afternoons when you're not working down at the casino, or you can only come on Friday mornings when you have a babysitter. And so it takes us forever to get the hours in. If they take one of the tests and they fail it, they have to wait 2 weeks before they can come and take the test again. It's just the timing of the requirements that make that particularly difficult. But we would love to legislatively find a way to pay them other than, and we've even discussed this, we can just flat out hire them. Just say, you're a strong prospect, we're going to hire all 10 of you, we're going to pay your salary, we're going to pay you benefits, your employees, and if you don't work out, you don't work out. But you have every grievance right, you have unemployment, you're just taking a chance. You're just hiring all 10 of them, and if 5 of them or 8 of them wash out, they're your employee, and then you've got to go through the whole termination process.
And do we have any leeway with Epic with bus drivers for that?
We do. Epic is an at-will employer, and quite frankly, Berkeley uses them for their special education transportation, and we have had
We're
several
starting to look at that.
meetings to discuss that. And again, it causes some angst, consternation among the staff, because they would then be employees through Epic, which has, while the pay scale would be there, the circumstances of their employment would be different.
Well, even if you had the choice, you could do one or the other, but at least it would get somebody in there, right? Although that would be, of course, again, a nightmare to manage.
Nightmare, thank you.
Yet another one. All right, and then how about over the last 3 years, are we going increasing or decreasing in our fill rates? I know you showed us from last year to this year, but where do we look over the last 3 years?
It looks like we're going down. We're going down.
So our
the trend.
fill rates are getting
Less.
more difficult.
Yes,
Okay.
because there are fewer applicants from which to choose. Our pool is shrinking, and there are fewer people to spread those jobs across.
Okay.
And again, we have some practices structurally within the system and policy-wise that force people's hands with regard to their behaviors. So if it's punitive for me to tell you that I'm going to be sick next Friday while I'm in Florida at Disney World, I'm going to wait till Thursday night to tell you that I don't feel good tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. But we are of an open mind to say, how about we give you a pool of leave and you use it any way that you want, and just give me notice so I can make sure there's a body for those students in the classroom. And we would be perfectly happy with that.
So that's one of the reasons that we put, and can you go back one
Sure.
slide, please, Mr. Bedford? One of the things that we are asking from you as a board is we have the capacity to chase only so many rabbits down. So of all the suggestions, and I've got 6 that you've given us so far that you'd like for us to explore, and here are these others up here, we want to know from you which ones of these you believe that you would support as a board us moving forward, because some of them would entail policy changes or legislative changes or staffing changes, and we'll explore those. It's not there's no vote. You're not telling us this is what you'll do, but what do you want us to explore to bring back to you for things that we can do and change that will have an effect on our ability, however incremental it may be, on our ability to fill these positions.
I think one of the reasons is long-term people are filling quickly is because subs like to know where they're going in the morning. So if they can reach out there and pull a job a week in advance, they know they can plan. Mm-hmm. And if somebody calls in at the last minute and you're sitting there eating breakfast and boom, you got to go somewhere, as a sub, that makes it a little different as well.
Agreed.
And I think that takes away from our pool. If we have 200 or 300 and some people, then we got 50 that already took the long-term ones, and there probably are people that sub the most.
We have discussed whether or not, and in some larger systems, this has been one of the responses, is simply to actually hire a teaching position where your job is to sub where we ask you to. Your job is that
You will sub
immediate
every
sub.
day.
You will sub every day. That's your job. We're going to pay you full salary. We're going to pay you full benefits. But your job is to go wherever we tell you to that morning because this place is open. Again, that's a...
Would that cost us additionally a lot to do that?
It would just simply be the cost of another teaching position. And if it subsequently reduced the need for subs, then really the only differential, again, depending on how experienced that teacher is that we hire for full-time, it's really a difference in benefits because we're paying the subs anyway. We're just not paying them benefits. Part of it would be, I mean, you can see from the number of jobs, there's no way that we don't keep them busy all the time. Quite frankly, we could hire 10 full-time licensed teaching positions and say your job is just to go where we tell you every day and sub. Every one of them, I guarantee you, will have a job and a place to be every single day. Part of it is, like, we can't fill the teaching jobs that we're subbing out of, so some of it is just the pool. I don't know how much difference it would make for us to say, this is your job, your full-time job, because if that's the case, they need to be somebody with a diploma, with a bachelor's degree, and willing for that to be their full-time job. We're already sucking those folks up with the long-term subs, but if that's something that the board wants us to pursue, we can look at the number of sub jobs every day and what number of them on average are the notify me the day of, and come back to the board in the next budget cycle with a recommendation that says, we recommend you add 10 teaching positions and their job is to be full-time subs all the time, and see if it reduces our sub budget. They won't be exactly equal because of the benefits, but...
I would like to know the cost difference to what we're paying them now and what we would pay them with benefits and stuff. How much it's going to cost us as a system.
Yes, sir.
to
And
do that-
for each one
to
of them...
do that for 10.
For 10, okay.
I like the legislative approach, especially with the bus drivers. If there's a way to hire them as another category where, yes, they've done what they need to do to become employees, and we can be training them and using them, and in that time they get those 40 hours, get their CDLs, those things, so that it's sort of like they move from category to bus, from some category that is useful, and maybe they decide, I like working for Jefferson County Schools, but I don't know if I want to drive a bus. And then, perhaps we can shuffle them into another category, which would take legislative discussions.
Because that would be a classification issue. Like I will say this, that it would be very helpful if they were a little less rigid. Not necessarily about bus drivers, because that, student safety. But to your point, those classification tests and us moving people between classifications, they are extremely rigid and archaic. We've actually asked them for permission to develop our own certification tests, because we had people who were struggling with some of these. When you say archaic, some of them are literally 15 to 20 years old. And, if you want to be a secretary here, you still have to type 80, words a minute, 85?
That one's been revised.
Oh, yay. That's good.
Only
So-
45 words.
Oh, okay. Revised downward. But, again, that's some of that is us getting from you what you want us to pursue as remedies. So of these recommendations, do you want us to pursue any or all of these as well?
I think, to Arthina's point, I would agree that the legislative change, this specific one, and adding to that, see if there's even just a notation to be able to post.
In the language of the code.
In the language of the code, because that is something, they're always saying to us, just bring us the code and bring us what change you want to the code, so that we can see that. And I think over the last few years at least, hopefully it will stay the same, we have had really good dialogue and been able to get a lot of good changes in we have not seen before. So I'm still hopeful that that's going to continue, and I think because we've had the positiveness with the legislature, we need to, I think, at least move with that one for sure. Does anybody disagree? We don't want to move with those.
Well, it was a double negative. What's your question?
Does anyone disagree with moving towards a legislative change? How's that?
I agree.
No
For
disagreement?
all of them, or?
No, just the
Just the
number one
legislative.
legislative change that's asking about the sick leave and also the possible change in code.
I would have a problem with changing the sick leave to LWCs. I think when you open it up to the category of LWCs, that is too wide a category. I would just like to make it leave, but I don't want it to have all the things, the nuances that LWC has.
Okay.
So you wanted to ask for just,
I'd
I
call
get
it something-
X
call
number
it
of sick
something
days?
else.
How about
Right.
that?
Yeah, call it
Make
something.
X
Yeah,
number of
we
sick
had
days.
looked at like terminology because some of it is you do have the code does allow, and we're still sort of working through this with legal, the code allows school boards to determine what you will accept as constituting sick leave. Sort of like the same way you do with a leave of absence. We have a series, a leave of absence without pay. We have a series of criteria where you as a board have defined these things will qualify you, and if it's not on this list, you don't qualify for it. Because, we have people who have lots of reasons. So one of the ways that you could consider is to extensively broaden what you will consider and accept for sick leave. Because right now we have very specific criteria. Basically, you really need to be sick, or your kids need to be sick, or someone in your family needs to be sick, or a medical appointment. I mean, you've specified those. If you want to vastly broaden that, then again,
Students work sick.
If they're sick, coming to work.
If I'm
Mental
sick
health
of
day?
coming to work
If
and
I'm
need a
sick of
mental
coming
health
to
day,
work,
that would
that
just
counts.
cover.
Weren't they called personal days? It's called personal days.
in Virginia, that's exactly what we ended up going to, was we just termed them all personal leave. It's your decision how you use them and what you do with them. I don't want to be the sick police. I don't want to chase you down and argue with you that you couldn't possibly have known 2 weeks ago that you were going to be sick. What I want is to have bodies in front of kids. So we actually had a debate about this today at the personnel rep meeting because, again, we have some folks, just their personal integrity says, well, don't call in sick unless you're actually sick or your kids are actually sick. And it bothers them that we would be considering saying, I know that you're not really sick and you're lying, essentially. But I think we have a whole set, and I don't want to say it's generational, but they earned those days. They're their days. And in many of their minds, I've earned these days. It's a benefit to me. And I can't save them up for anything. Although there is discussion, the State Board of Ed, we were notified last Thursday, has placed that on their legislative agenda to go back to allowing them to use their sick leave to buy retirement. It hasn't happened yet. But, if you've got the leave and
You're going to lose it when you retire.
and you're going to lose it when you retire, there's no incentive not to burn it. There's none. And if you're going to burn it anyway, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to serve kids. And the more you've seen it, if I have noticed, if we as a system have noticed, we do a great job. Candace Breeden is a beast. She works her tail off. But day of, when you have 72 people calling the day of, there's nothing you can do about that. Nothing. So if this one change, if people can ethically stomach it as a board, then it will help.
I think the attendance bonus helped as well. And I think we need to explore, it can't be done like it was done, but I think we need to explore a way to keep our people that are in the classroom in the classroom.
Okay.
It needs to be, they need to be given a couple of days that they can be off and still earn the bonus. Before, it was one
No,
day.
it was graduated.
Was it
last time.
graduated?
Yes,
I thought
it
it
was.
was-
No, it was graduated, but
I
we
remember
need
that.
to find a way that we can keep our people that are regular teachers in the classroom.
One of our discussion points was exactly that. We would certainly bring a proposal to the board, but one of the discussions was rather than there being a hard and fast, once you miss more than this days, all bets are off, so there's no incentive for you not to just keep going.
I'm done, I can use the rest of them.
Right, so what we talked about was working on some type of attendance bonus that was based on a buyback at the end of the year. You got allocated 15 days this year. Let's say you missed 5. Well, we're going to buy back 10 of them at the end of the year. Say you missed 14. We're going to buy back 1 of them at the end of the year. So there's always an opportunity for you to do that. We would just have to discuss, as we have previously, not 261 staff not being eligible for that bonus, which would cause some people some angst, but most of the 261 staff accept that they get vacation days, and that's a part of it. But there are several things that we could use as lessons learned. And you also notice that you had as an attachment on our public documents today the survey from the state of West Virginia and the number of school systems who have attendance bonuses, and they do it in a wide variety of ways. So if there's something in particular that you see in that you want us to incorporate, it will help us as we're churning through this work.
I know we could talk about this all night, but
We could. Well, I'm up to, and I will follow up at the end of the board meeting, but I'm up to 10 things that the board would like for us to explore and work through and to work on here before we move forward. So if there's anything else on here that you want us to
I'm just glad you're
consider.
numbering them and not doing letters of the alphabet. Well, we'll run into just 26, and it's a hard stop.
Let me ask one question. Mr. Pettiford, what do you feel would be the most, that you would gain the largest ROI with the establish and maintain a dedicated recruitment budget and personnel? So about how much money, if it was allocated, do you think you would need, and for what, because you feel like you'd get the biggest ROI for us as a school system?
I think if we had a dedicated recruiter, that could make all the difference in the world in terms of impact, because we'd have someone full-time whose job is just to do that. Strictly look at recruiting. And that would be including looking at those strategic partners, pre-programming and pre-planning where those events are going to be, how to execute against those, taking a look at the pools, assisting principals and administrators with regard to the hiring process, and just being able to solely focus on that. Currently, we just do not have the bandwidth to do that as a specialized area. It's one of those areas that we cover in the course of a day with the other 50 things that we're doing.
Do you feel like that would take you a full-time person, or you think somebody could spend X number of hours a week just doing that, and that may be beneficial?
I think, quite frankly, if we had any amount of time from someone doing that for any number of hours a week dedicated, that is better than nothing.
And it may also be a seasonal type thing where they're trying to recruit before graduation.
Well, and keeping in mind that you have graduations at least 2 times a year in the,
Right.
in the winter or fall, and then summertime is hiring RIF and transfer season, so we'd be hiring all the way ready from like about March through June 30th, capturing those people who haven't been secured for contracts for the next school year. That'd be a hot season. And of course, it's hot even during the summer, starting July 1 and up until the day we open school.
If we were going to do it, I think it would be better to do it all year round rather than having, so much here or so much here or whatever.
No, but I think it would be, they would be busier during those particular seasons before graduation. And the other thing, we need to focus on retention, not just recruitment, because you
Sure.
saw how much it costs for turnover of teachers.
That's right.
So
It's a lot cheaper to keep what you have than to go buy new. And to your point with regard to time, Mr. Cooley's position is a 220-day position. So by June, he's gone. that's a primary recruiting time for us, and it's just one person here doing that. So.
And how much do you think, with the 180 contacts, 91 that occurred as far as that, you hired 26, you said we are keeping data on what happened to the rest of them, and I'd kind of be interested long-term as we start looking at this data. How many of them did we lose to the speed of the process? They've already got another job. We took too long. We didn't get back to them soon enough. We couldn't get them through the process fast enough. And frankly, they went and got a job at Sheetz, or they went and got a part-time job wherever, because it was, I see you today, I hire you tomorrow. Do we have some data on why are we losing them, and what can we do in the effect of our process to make it more efficient so we don't lose those folks later? Are we keeping track of that?
We have talked about that, and one of the issues is the change of the fingerprinting and background check. It's taking longer at the current time. So that is one issue. Another issue is that some people are just looking for regular, steady work. And several have returned my emails.
I'm
saying they
thinking
found
whether
other
it's
jobs.
with service with a food handler card, or fingerprinting, or whatever else that you've spoken of, that if we had like one designated day every single month, and we contact with those companies to say, hey, this is our monthly day, and people know when they come in, maybe that person could come here, or maybe all of those people together go right there, and then they know, I'm going to do this and this and this, and I get this all done on the same day. We're not having them do one thing and then, well, now you've got to do this. Maybe they need a ride. Maybe they need this. Maybe, who knows what their things that are inhibiting them. We don't know. But if it was available to them that all of those things could happen in that same day, and we had partnerships with, the health department for the food handler card.
We do. We pay for the food handler card. They just have to go to the health department with the form.
Okay, so again, if maybe we could even look at doing, how would that be efficient if we did that all in one day? This is
Well,
a
the
whatever day.
interviews don't always occur. It's a rolling process is what it is. We can definitely look at that, but it's a rolling process. And, they know exactly, and I encourage them, all the things they have to do. So they are encouraged along the way, and they know exactly what tasks they have to do. Everything is spelled out for them.
And unfortunately, as you can see from the list of things that Mr. Cooley enumerated, most of those, if not 99% of them, are code-driven. So we're just following the basic code to get from A to Z to get people through the door, because it's very regulated.
I would just say, like I said, looking at all those things, I would like us to try to keep track of why we're losing them, because I really do think that there are things within the process that we are doing inefficiently that we could be better at, or that maybe there are things that we could do in that regard. As much as I hate to say it, yeah, I would have no problem taking charge and say, yep, I got to do this, I got to do this, I could schedule it, I could do this, but
Well, we have discussed that. We tried to determine, are there certain things we could streamline, but there are certain things we really can't forego, such as a background check. We can't
yeah, and
forego
I'm
the
not
background
saying we
check.
forego it, but
We
what
can't
I'm saying
forego-
is, can we do it to where we know that if we're going to have X sign up on this day, they've called, they're ready to go, we get 20 people in that day, they all do their applications, they all do their EPI tests, everybody's ready, then we know, okay, hey, so-and-so, we're coming here on this day, whatever needs to be done, all those 20 people, whoop, now we go here, whoop, now we go here, whoop, now we go here. So I don't have to wait for them to contact me back. I have already provided all of those things, or I'm expecting that 20 people on the next day are going to show up at such and such a time, at such and such a place, and that specific place is ready for those people to walk in the door because they know they have background checks on those, or I send all 20 of them at the same time. I know I'm getting those back in 7 days, or however long it takes them to do that, and I'm going to get them back. But at least it's not, it's like this trickle effect, and then maybe, like you said, you've got to go through those folders, and every 2 weeks, and some of them have been 3 weeks before, some of them have been a week before.
With background checks, they have to go through an online site, and the online site will schedule them with the place downtown in Martinsburg. They have to go there personally.
Okay.
So maybe that's the only thing that they do independently, but I like the group concept, the cohort concept.
Right, and I do that with the testing. so that I'm testing aides, custodians, and cooks at the same time. But the food handler card, that has to go through the health department. And they're responsible for getting their references. I don't send anyone to you without references, because I think that that's only correct. That we don't hire people without references. I mean, I've tried to streamline it as much as I can without compromising student safety.
And then at some point, personal responsibility has to come into play, because that's out of your hands right now. A lot of it, it's the individual that needs to go and check the boxes of what they need to do, correct?
And it's really not that much.
Well, really, the only way to streamline this is move to another state.
Thank you, Mr. Gable, for giving us the best perspective of that.
A lot of states, though, no, a lot of states you need to have the background check and the fingerprinting, and you go to different places to do that. And anytime you work with food, you need a food handler's card. I mean, that's not the state tripping us up there. That's just process.
Not that sort of thing, but a lot of the other stuff is that's required that might be handled in a different way, but we have to go through West Virginia code, and that's, I mean, just reading it is difficult, much less doing what it says.
All right. Run, Mr. Pettiford, run.
Save yourself.
Thank you very much.
for your time this evening.
Yes, thank you.
While you're wrapping up, I'll get the next one.
Your architectural firms that have been run through a rubric and through a whole group of people. I gave you the rubrics that we used to bring these people to you. Then I also gave you a rubric for tonight, because tonight we've asked them to look at, you can come on in. Okay. We've asked them to look at success rate for SBA, availability of their ongoing projects right now, how busy they are, sort of, their office locations, their change order process with the architect firm making the error, because we've had this before and we don't like that. No. So, I can't imagine like it, in general. Their green school or net zero projects that they've had, the LEED green, or it could be platinum, overall planning process, how they would see it, and the committee's engagement process, how they would engage the committees, and then the bond process and how they'd be working with us with the bond. It's a lot to ask for in 20 minutes.
I know.
But that's what I gave them, was 20 minutes. So at that point, you'll have a little rubric set up, and you don't have to use this rubric because, again, it's your decision. I was just trying to give you a little tool.
I will also, just as notification to the board, the RFP that was put out was only for architectural and engineering services. This is not for energy projects, meaning somebody wants to come in and save us money on renovating one of our schools by removing the HVAC system and putting in a geothermal unit. That is an entirely separate bid process and won't be run through this right here. So we're not choosing an energy company today. It is strictly architectural and engineering.
I just want to make sure that the televisions and sound is off in the hallway.
Probably is.
Okay, ma'am.
Just want to make sure that
Concerned that the televisions were on in the
Yes.
hallway.
Right.
Yes, that's exactly what she went out to do.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good thinking.
Did she go talk to Jason?
Are they all?
I don't want anybody copying your presentation.
Thank you guys are awesome. We were thinking that. I'm sure they were thinking that. Let's just get that awkward situation out the way. Right?
They're out there redoing their PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. Greg said this.
The funny thing is that we all know each other, so it's almost like an architect reunion out there. So,
Okay. Welcome.
thank you. We go ahead and get started.
Yes, please. I think.
Time was 8:30.
Okay.
8:31.
Well, thank you all very much for having us come tonight. I'll have each of us will introduce ourselves. But my name is Randy Jones. I'm an architect, and I'm a CEO at OWPR, Architects and Engineers.
Thank you. My name is Blair Fryer. I'm an architect with OWPR, and I'll be the project manager.
Thank you. My name is Greg Wellman. I'm with CMTA. We're the MEP engineering firm on this team, and I'm a principal at our firm.
So what our goal tonight is to give you a really quick rundown of who we are, what we do, and the experience that we have. As I said, we are an architect engineering firm. Our main office is in Blacksburg, Virginia. However, we do have 2 West Virginia offices, one in Martinsburg and another one in Charleston, and that's where Blair is located. We've been in business over 50 years. Mostly about 80% of our work is K-12. And we do have our own architects and engineers, but we have been partnering with CMTA successfully on some projects, and we have some information to share with you tonight that we hope you will be interested in.
So, as Randy said, I'm representing CMTA. CMTA is a national engineering firm. We have 9 offices around the country, as you can see on the map there. We have you covered very, very well. We actually have an office right here in Charlestown on North George Street, where we have 6 West Virginia employees there, in DC and Richmond, Virginia, et cetera. So we were about 265 people nationwide in our offices. I get to work with a lot of brilliant people. You can go to the next slide, sir. All this slide says is that the CMTA has an incredible depth of field. We hire a ton of engineers and a ton of bright people. All those letters mean that they are very, very qualified at what they do. And our 50-year history, it's interesting, we're both about the same. We just turned 50 years this year, and we take pride in all the employees that we have. So I want to tell you a little bit briefly about your neighbor, Berkeley County Schools, who we've successfully worked with for several years now. I started that project along with Jeremy Smith, my colleague, with Manny Arvon there, Don Mitchell, Dr. Queen, and the board there. And I'll just say, we have saved that district $3 million. Let me say that again, $3 million over the past several years in real money. Those design principles are what we'd like to bring to Jefferson County, those results. OWPR, we just won a project at one of their intermediate schools, and you'll see the 3rd line down there where it says we reduce energy consumption. That OVI stands for Orchard View Intermediate. So we took that school, we basically knocked half the energy out of that building. So when we're designing schools, this is what the value that we bring. Next, sir.
So I want to talk a little bit about our methodology and our approach to the project. As a firm, as a K-12 firm, we like to go into everything with an objective attitude, investigate, document, make sure we understand everything that you have. Our team will go into your building, they'll physically examine it, we videotape it, we photograph it, so we get as much information as we can with as little impact on the school as possible. So usually that will be done after school hours so that we don't impact the education. We want to be smart about what we're doing. Some will say architects don't always have a lot of common sense. I think that we try to pride ourselves on having more common sense than most. We understand that these are taxpayer dollars and that we need to be prudent. We cannot be wasteful and just throw a lot of architectural embellishments into our project without being able to justify them. You need to have a roof that doesn't leak. You need to have windows that are efficient. You need to have air conditioning, heating. Those have to be done first. Anything beyond that is an extra. And then I say that. Then on the other hand, we want to be creative. I mean, as architects, that's what we do. We went to school to be creative and to design. And I say that I love my job. Blair loves his job. Greg loves his job. We are very enthusiastic. We like to have a lot of fun. Greg and I smile a lot, but it's because we truly do enjoy what we're doing. And,
No better way to do it.
that's right. And we try to get Blair to smile a little bit more,
Yeah.
too. So our process is getting as much information from the stakeholders. So the stakeholders are you all in this room, the community members. Faculty, students are a great resource for information. I have learned more from a second grade student about an HVAC system than I have from some engineers. So kids have a great instinct on what's working and what's not working. And they can, in sometimes the most simplistic terms, pinpoint what a problem is that sometimes we as adults overanalyze things and don't really realize that there is a simple solution. So we also would offer focus groups, design workshops where we could look at different design options. This will go along with public hearings, which I know are part of the CEFP process. All this will be reviewed, refined with all your input. At the end of the day, these are your projects. Your input, your approval is necessary. We will not try to force any of our own agenda on you. We're not looking for rewards. We're looking for performance, and we talked about that earlier. Performance is what matters. And performance can be in energy usage. It can be in school testing, how students are performing. There's lots of different levels of performance, but that is our goal, not self-gratification or rewards. So we do have a lot of experience in terms of helping school divisions get bond referendums passed, levies passed. A lot of times we will go to the county and they will do real estate tax assessments, and those real estate tax assessments will go towards school financing. We've been very fortunate. We've actually been able to help our clients gain about $500 million in funding, and a lot of that is hands-on, boots on the ground. Caroline County Schools, just north of Richmond, I worked with them on their $26 million bond. And we went to neighborhood homeowner associations, we went to churches, we went to PTOs, and we really hit the grassroots, the community leaders, because you have to be able to get the word out to the folks that are going to be making these decisions. If we just spend all of our time talking to you all and not get out into the community, in a lot of ways, we're preaching to the choir for you all. You know what your problems are. Our job is to get out into the community and share with them what the needs are so they can understand and appreciate that.
Well, another thing that's important too is the Board of Education cannot sell the bond issue.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to get members of your community to buy into that and support what you're doing, because if you guys are out doing all the selling, the community sees that as a self-serving thing.
Yeah.
This needs to be a groundswell of
Grassroots.
people, grassroots from everybody in the district that says, hey, these are the needs we have. We need your help to get this done. And we've assisted districts before in doing that. We know how to get people mobilized, so we can help.
And that may mean a lot of late nights. I go to a lot of night meetings like this, and that's when most people have time to provide the input and do the meetings. So we understand this is not a 9-to-5 type thing. These are things that are going to happen on weekends or in the evening. So we're fully prepared for that. You had asked about our change order rate. So we work really hard to keep our change order rates down. So this is interesting. I know that Mr. Dingus had asked for architect's errors. These are actually our change order rates in general. The architect's errors are much smaller than this, and there's a reason for that. We take ownership of our mistakes, and as painful as it is, we pay for our mistakes. I have a project in Frederick County right now, just one of your neighbors in Virginia, and Our food service consultant made a mistake that cost the county $8,000. So I am paying the county $8,000. These types of mistakes don't get repeated because they're painful. When you hit somebody in their pocketbook, they pay attention. So we do take responsibility for it. If we make a mistake, we generally do not make it twice. But that's how we handle change orders. So I've heard that may be a little bit unique in the world, but that's just been our philosophy. We have a 90% repeat business rate with our clients, and I think that speaks volumes. We've worked with Frederick County Schools in Winchester for 35 years continuously.
And we're how far away?
We're 30 minutes.
Well, but from Blacksburg.
Oh, from Blacksburg, we're 3.5 hours away. Yeah.
So yeah, able to keep that communication solid.
This slide is really just for the SBA. The SBA requires that we use a BIM program, which is a 3D modeling program. This is really why the change order rates are so low. We adopted this BIM model, or it's called a Revit program. It's a 3D modeling program about 8 years ago. We are now drawing our buildings in 3D. We are building them 3D with this program. And that has reduced our conflicts between ductwork and steel, pipes and ductwork, and all the potential conflicts there are, because we can model it in 3D. The SBA requires us to give them a report that says we have no conflicts in our model. So that is a hard thing to do, and there was a lot of pushback from it. We were the first firm in West Virginia to do it, and I have told the SBA countless times, don't give up on this, because this is worth doing. This is saving the school divisions money. So it's a very important thing, and we fully embrace it, and I think that once you go through that process, you'll understand the benefits of it as well with reduced change orders. So I wanted to mention this, and I already mentioned it once. We have been working with Frederick County Schools in Winchester for about 35 years, and we have done a lot of schools with them. We've done 19 major projects with them. I can't tell you how many school superintendents we've been through and how many school board members or Board of Education members we've been through, but it is our commitment and our service to our clients that keeps them as clients for us. We also have a good working relationship with Warren County, and Dr. Gibson, I don't know if you remember Melody Shepard, but she mentioned that she went through superintendent's training with you, and I was with her today in a meeting. So we do have a lot of relationships, and we targeted the Panhandle of West Virginia specifically when we opened our office here 7 years ago, because we felt like it was being underserved. And so I think we're now beginning to break into that. And Blair's going to talk a little bit more about our school experience in West Virginia.
Yeah, I think we've been doing this for quite a while, and the market is starting to come. I'm not going to read all of those, but I think certainly one of the ones we want to call attention to is the Berkeley thing, which we're especially happy about for a couple reasons. One, it's a very large school district. They've got a lot of things going on. And then the second thing is because we get the chance to work with CMTA again. That's been good. One of our schools, ready to go to the next slide, in Raleigh County, the very first school in West Virginia that is net zero ready is the new Ridgeview Elementary School, which our firm did in conjunction with Greg's firm, CMTA, and we're very proud about that. We've had a good working relationship. One of the things that we like to try to do, when Randy and I talk about this, we like to make friends. Because when you make friends, you don't want to betray your friends. You want to put, if I'm good friends with you, the last thing I want to do is do something that's going to impact you the wrong way. So that's something else that we bring to the table. We want to make friends. We want to do a good job. When we get finished, what we want you to say is, hey, we like working with them. They look good. That's what we do.
So this is just a quick slide just to demonstrate our experience doing comprehensive education facility plans. We've done this for over 200 schools. Everyone does them a little bit different. I understand the SBA has their own policies on that, and we understand what those policies are. And Blair's been involved with that. probably more than any of us, but a lot of experience with that, and we know what we're doing when we go into schools. We have a system, it works well, and like I said, it's low impact. We will not affect the day-to-day education of a student. So I mention this because I know that the West Virginia Department of Education has encouraged the use of School Dude, which to me is just a crazy name, but I love the name. But it's under the Dude Solutions corporate umbrella. Most of our clients use that, both in Virginia and a lot in West Virginia. It's a really powerful tool. If you haven't used it or you're just getting ready to use it, scheduling the maintenance, we specify a piece of equipment, we put a barcode on that, barcode scanned in, goes into School Dude, all that equipment from the manufacturer is automatically imported. So Mr. Dingus can look and see, I need this part for this material, this is where I order it, and it's all done. So we assist with that. We make sure that our specifications are written so you can get that information from the contractors. So it's a huge asset for you to use. And we also work with a lot of county governments, and they are using what's called Facility Dude, which is the companion to School Dude. So it's a really powerful program, and if you're not using it, I think you're going to find that it can probably do more than you ever dreamed it could do.
So you had asked us about LEED and our zero energy experience, and Randy gave me one slide.
You got to be quick, Greg.
But here's what I would say to you. CMTA is a leader, I would say the leader in zero energy. We've got over 1 million square feet of zero energy projects. What I'm very proud of, as I mentioned with Berkeley County, we had saved them $3 million. I just kind of want you to think about how many teacher salaries that is. That's what Manny Arbano, he always talks about, Dr. Gibson. He's like, Greg, all this money, these are my competing dollars. That's huge for us. We were able to bring that. We did the first net zero school in the country in Richardsville Elementary in Kentucky. We recently have done the largest net zero school in the country. That's Discovery Elementary in Arlington, Virginia, which is over 100,000 square feet. Those are both our projects. Raleigh County, that third bullet there, I really want to highlight because we've got over 50 now zero energy ready. What that means is essentially they are such low energy users. If you plop solar on the roof, they could be net zero. So that's what the NREL, which is the National Real Energy Institute, the New Building Institute, defines that as. So they have to have a 35 EUI or less. Big number, but all EUI is like miles per gallon in a car. I don't care whether it's a police station, a Kroger, a school, a hospital. How much energy does that building use per square foot? And as board members, that's important because that you're trying to be good stewards of your dollars, right? Well, that's where CMTA comes in and helps you because you're not paying those costs year over year. If you call the treasurer right now at Berkeley County Schools, that's money he's not paying year over year. As Dr. Queen likes to say as a board member over there, president of the board there, my utility bills were $4 million, now they're $2.5 million. I can understand that, and those are real numbers. But in Raleigh County, I want to highlight this because it's the only school in West Virginia that is net zero ready, and this team did that school. We modeled it about a 25 EUI. The first month of data says it's going to be a 22. So not only will it be the first net zero ready school in West Virginia, but it's one of the best performing schools in the country, even one of ours, and we've done several of them obviously up there. So that's something I think West Virginia can be very proud of, and we certainly would like to do that with you all in the future.
So when we were approached with the idea of doing a review, Discovery Elementary in Arlington kept popping up as the standard, and as you are aware, Arlington School District is very wealthy. They have a lot of money, and Greg, you all are part of that team, and it has some fantastic school features in it. Most of our clients, which are more rural school divisions, don't have those kinds of budgets. So what we tried to do with CMTA is right from the beginning is figure out how can we do this without increasing the budget for the school. So this school was built for just a standard elementary school budget, and it actually came in $1.8 million under budget. We put in terrazzo floors everywhere. Raleigh County's been trying to spend money in all different types of places for upgrades. But we were very fortunate on the bid market, but it's a very efficient school, it's a very efficiently designed school, and it has a lot of really great features to it, and it was modeled after Discovery.
I would just add one quote,
Yeah.
from Berkeley County. You know, I hate to keep bringing it up, when you do so much work over there, you're proud of it, right? And it's right next door. You know, we first visited Berkeley County. They have a beautiful school, Spring Mills Primary, that they built. It was a LEED Gold school. So they had a big plaque on the wall. They were very proud of it. And we said, well, Manny, give us a year of utility bills. He gave us a year of utility bills. We did the analysis. It was a 64 EUI. So it was running like a, you know, kind of like an old Ford, 8-cylinder Ford. But it was a LEED Gold school. They were very proud of it. 2 years later, after our renovation, just a renovation, we didn't tear the school down and start over. We got it down to a 44. So now it's running like a Toyota, a very efficient Toyota. Those are the type of things that we're able to do because we have the data and the experience to do that for school districts just like Jefferson County. So it can be done.
So we have not done as many LEED projects as CMTA. However,
We'll get you there, bud.
we embrace the LEED concepts. We think the LEED concepts should just be adopted by the building code because there's a lot of really great things in there, and we wish the IBC would just go ahead and adopt them. But there's also a lot of fluff, and there's just a lot of things in the LEED thing that you have to do just get points, which I don't necessarily agree with. But it gets you a plaque at the end of the day. But our philosophy is let's design it to meet LEED standards and get the benefits of it, get the performance of it. Yeah. And if you still want the plaque, then we can do that. But I think what you as board members are interested in is what's the performance and what's the value of that. So, and we are done.
Look at that.
We are done. I timed that well.
Hey, extra score for this team, 20 minutes.
Do you all have any questions?
Sorry, like friends.
So plus 5 points for time, minus 1 point each time you said Berkeley County.
He did that.
I'm getting fired.
I have a question. Do you have any former educators on your team?
We do have some retired superintendents that assist us, and we do that on an as-needed basis. We also have on our teams, and our proposal is a national firm called DeYoung Richter that helps with CEFP programming, and so that's something else we have a resource for. Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, and thank you.
Thank you. I will leave this PowerPoint presentation with you all on the thumb drive if you'd like to have it. And I'll go ahead and close out so the next team can go ahead.
Thank you.
I think. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Maybe. Doesn't want, there we go. Okay, I think we are good. I know you all had a long evening, so I hope everything goes well, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you for waiting.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting.
Thank all of you for your patience this evening. It's a nice long one.
Educational. I'm missing my son's basketball game. I'm trying to catch the stats.
Hello.
Hello. How are you all tonight? How are you? You're fine. That was me. It was on me. I was trying to do two things at once.
I know the feeling.
Thank you. Thank you.
There you go. We're good to go. Okay. Thank you. Where shall we stand?
Right here.
Right here? Right here. Right here. Okay. Because we're looking right at you, straight ahead. You're looking right at me. Okay. All right. Good evening.
Good evening.
Williamson Traveler.
Yes. All right.
And in 20 minutes, a timer's going to go off, just to let you know, so we can attempt
Okay.
to not
Great.
get too far off track from
All
where
right.
we are.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this evening and discuss a little bit about who we are. I know you've got the book that we submitted. In fact, the book here tonight, the first part of it is this presentation, and the back part of it is what we submitted to Mr. Dingus. So in case you don't have a copy of it, it's in the back. But anyway, we appreciate the opportunity to be here before you tonight, and we're going to address your questions. But I am Ted Shriver, architect with Williamson Shriver Architects, and this is Jim Kaczynski, engineer with Tower Engineering. And the two of us, our firms, have teamed together for a number of years on educational projects around the state. As I said, tonight we're going to spend just a little bit of time talking about relevant experience. We're going to address your questions that you presented to us and then tell you why we are the best team. The relevant experience breaks down into two categories: school planning and design, and then CEFP. As I know, part of this is about the CEFP. The last 10 years, we've been involved in 8 high schools, 9 middle schools, 19 elementary schools all over the state of West Virginia. Here in Jefferson County, we've had the privilege of being a part of 3 of your schools, Blue Ridge, Drisswood, and of course Wildwood Middle. At the time, Wildwood was called the 9th grade edition. Goes back a number of years, but we thank you for that opportunity. But other projects around the state, in Berkeley County, we've done numerous projects. The campus at Spring Mills, the primary, the intermediate, the middle school, and the high school, as well as some Jarrettstown projects in Hardy County, Moorfield, and East Hardy, and then also Mountain Ridge. So continuing over into Monongalia County, we've worked in Monongalia County since 2003. And when I say we, I say Williamson Shriver Architects and Tower Engineering. Our team has been together for numerous years. But since 2003, we've worked in Monongalia County 15 years. Numerous projects there. Our latest one actually is ongoing at Morgantown High School. But last year we opened up the Suncrest Elementary School. In Putnam County, numerous projects there. We were part of their bond issue, working at Winfield Middle School, Polka, and Buffalo High School. There was about 6 or 8 projects there that we were involved in. Now tonight we're talking about CEFP. So we've been involved with the School Building Authority since inception, 1998. And we performed CEFPs for 22 counties when they were put together in 2000, and 20 counties in 2010, which is now the end of that cycle. And we were also involved in 5 multi-county facilities doing their CEFPs. Those expired 3 years ago, and they have not gone through the renewal process. So we have a vast amount of experience of how it was done in the past. But I think, as Dr. Gibson knows, it's going to be different now, because I think you attended a seminar last week. They're going to be using Dude Solutions, School Dude, to gather all the information. School Dude is going to help with demographics, which has always been tough in the past. They're going to somehow work with community analysis. I'm not sure how that's going to work. But that's supposed to kick off in January with completion of all of these in the spring of 2020. But the thing that they've
preached about this is that it's a living document. The document that you have now is 2 binders, very thick, just gets antiquated, nobody knows where it is, if the information is valid or not. This is all electronic, which we all know electronic world is good or bad, and that's why I have the books tonight, because I wasn't sure if this was going to work. But everything sounds like it's going to be the right process. But I've been a part of a number of those meetings with the school building authority. Now to your questions. Our success rate with SBA projects. 400 projects since their inception of the SBA. We've helped numerous counties put together their grant submissions to the school building authority. Again, Tower Engineering and ourselves, helping counties to identify what the needs are, help them with the cost proposals, and giving them insight as to what makes it a good project for the school building authority. That breaks down to 126 high school, 47 of those being the SBA, 80 middle schools, with 26 of them being with the SBA, 188 middle schools, 98 of them being SBA. Went to the SBA's website, kind of pushed me to the limit here, Mr. Dingus and committee. I went to their website, and they listed all the projects that they've funded since 2009 through 17. I looked at all the projects that we were responsible for and those projects that got awarded. All of these projects are mostly in the 20%, 30% tile. There was one year in 13 that was only 13%. These are projects that we ended up receiving, helping counties put their project together, and those projects received funding. There's only about 6 or 7, maybe not that many, 5 firms in the state that actively pursue SBA projects. And I like to brag on myself, but these numbers were startling to me when I went through and looked at this. Availability as related to ongoing projects. This is our current workload right now. The blue is quite honestly where you might feel that you would be affected by our ability to perform, because that's where the CEFP would take most of our staff's time. But really, from the CEFP standpoint, it's going to be taking most of my time, most of Jim Kaczynski's time. We're no longer on the board. We've kind of graduated from that. So Jim and I are available. This is our staff's workload to evaluate your projects. Our office location. Yes, I'm in Charleston, West Virginia. Tower Engineering is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Sorry, I got next slide here. We've also teamed with Triad Engineering in Winchester. They'll do our site engineering work. So if there's a need for somebody to be here extremely quickly, Triad Engineering has an office location that can do that. But this next slide again that I showed you earlier, we've worked all over the state, and no one has complained about us not being able to be on site. As I said earlier, for 15 years we've worked in Monongalia County. They share a parking lot with an architectural firm. In 2003, I said I cannot let my location dictate whether I go to a Board of Education meeting or whether I go to a construction meeting, because they'll hire the architect that's in their parking lot. So whether it's in Jefferson County or in Kanawha County, I treat everybody the same. I don't charge anybody mileage. I don't charge you for motel room. So, it's a cost of doing business. Change order process regarding errors. We first need to figure out what is the change order. Is it a viable change order? Contractors love to share change orders, but sometimes they're not viable. We need to review the scope of them. Review if it's a value-added change order. We need to determine the responsibility. And yes, if we have a design error, we'll own up to it. But what we feel is, and we've had very, very few of these, we've never been sued by a Board of Education, but our experience in the K-12 market is second to none. Our staff has been around for a number of years, 28, 30 years. You know, I've been in this business 34 years, the same firm. So we know K-12. Do we make mistakes? Yes. But we understand the process. So staff tenure, school design, principals in charge equals quality control. LEED and net zero. We have 3 projects of our team that are SBA funded, LEED design. 2 of them are gold. Spring Mills Primary was the first SBA funded LEED design school. Eastwood Elementary in Morgantown was LEED gold. Actually, it was slated for silver. And then Gilmer is slated for certified, and it's on track for being silver. So we have that experience from the LEED certification. Net zero, I'm going to let Jim talk for a few minutes about that.
In addition to those LEED projects, Tower Engineering has also worked on over 30 LEED certified projects, so we're very familiar with that process. So for a CEFP, as Ted indicated, the 2 of us would be personally involved, and there's a lot of time spent walking through your facilities. And the product of that is developing a report and an understanding of your buildings that would allow us to identify the existing conditions as well as provide an assessment of each one of your buildings. So the type of information that we get is going to be very comprehensive. I'll just let you pass this through. This is a very detailed report that we recently did, and this is representative of the amount of detail that we would put together. And we would work with School to make sure that the information is formatted in a manner that's consistent. Going through a building and looking at existing systems can be fairly straightforward. This is an old piece of equipment. It's beyond its expected longevity. So we try to take a step further than that. We try to look at how the buildings are running. Something that's very prevalent in a lot of school facilities is mold. Here's an article that's talking about mold growth. And so when we go through buildings, I'm not saying any of your buildings have mold growth, but what we try to look at and ask questions is how are the buildings being operated? In addition to how old is the equipment, how are you running the equipment? Are there ways that the systems can be tweaked that would make it more likely that you have a good outcome? So that's something that's very important. But net zero is something that we are certainly very familiar with, and it's getting a lot of press. A lot of people talking about buildings that generate enough power to offset the amount of power that they are consuming. Again, here's another article. This is a very recent ASHRAE journal that talks about a K through 12 building that achieved net zero status. This particular building did that by installing a $2 million photovoltaic array, a very expensive system that has a payback that's fairly significant, right? So there was a lot of first cost involved with this. This is one way that you can achieve net zero is to use wind turbines, windmills, or a solar array. Another way to achieve net zero is to sacrifice the indoor temperature and humidity in a building. So if you're not spending a lot of energy cooling a building, then that's a way to reduce the amount of energy that a building is required. There's a number of net zero buildings that have gone that route, and it unfortunately can be somewhat uncomfortable to live in. So that's another way that sometimes that happens. A third way that net zero is achieved is by purchasing energy credits. So buying energy from the utility company that is more expensive than the lowest rates that you can purchase. So these are all negative. It costs more money to buy more expensive power. And then another way that some buildings have achieved it is by being fortunate enough to be next to a garbage dump, and they pipe into the methane gas and burn the methane gas. So most buildings are not lucky enough to have that situation. But net zero is certainly something that we're familiar with, and we've had a number of projects where we've looked at the viability of net zero. In fact, I'm going to circulate another report that we put together. This is again a recent report that we did for Allegheny College, one of our clients, where we looked at how large a photovoltaic array would have to be to achieve net zero. And to do this, we did a energy analysis of the building, and that allowed us to site the photovoltaic array as well as look at the costs associated. So if that's something you're interested in, we're very much able to do that, as well as to provide any other additional energy calculations. So this is another example of a very detailed energy analysis that we did.
Okay, it's interesting that Jim was talking about buying energy credits, because that's what sometimes happens in the lead process. You get tied up in trying to maximize the number of points and not really doing the right thing. So those 3 projects, even though I'm very proud of them, it taught me to be more responsible in our designs and do the right things and not worry about the points. So overall planning experience processes. The next 3 questions really kind of all tie together. First, we need to identify the goals, and that seems pretty simple. I mean, it's not as simple as saying, we're going to build an elementary school, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that. It all starts with research in the curriculum. We need to make sure that everyone understands the curriculum, how it's going to be taught. And from that, you determine how a building design comes about, or how the county structure or the community is structured, the building is structured, and determine what your needs are from the curriculum. A lot of people start the other way, and the building doesn't function. It really doesn't function. So there needs to be a lot of detail on curriculum, and I'll be interested to know how School Dude Solutions addresses that. We listen. We have a lot of experience, but we want to listen to the users. We want to hear about what the successes are in the community, what the bad things are. We have a list of questions that we pass out for people to answer, and basically that gets their minds thinking, to think outside the box, as cliche that is, but taking the listening ability, taking our experience equals success. Committee engagement. Sometimes in order to get a committee engaged, you have to put a drawing in front of them. Talk about relationship of spaces. Here we're using a house, for instance, but just asking people how a boardroom needs to function for, large groups or breakout rooms, or where are the restrooms. Relationship of the building helps get the people to think about the whole process. And then we generate a drawing and continue to collaborate. The bond process takes it to the next level. The committee is going to be so involved in this whole process that they are going to be the spokespersons. It won't be us, it won't be the board, and quite frankly, it should not be the board. You kind of want to stay neutral. Let the committee, let the business people, the religious community, whoever is the strongest in the committee, find that person that's very vocal, that people respect, and let them spread the word. And before you know it, it just grows and grows and grows. Speaking of drawings, all of the work that's generated in the CEFP, putting the projects together into a bond, put it on paper, put it out in display at the banks, the shopping centers, the board office, the schools. Let people know what the project consists of. And don't tell them vote yes, just tell them vote. And that's very key. You can't tell somebody how to vote, but you can tell them to vote. So that's why this says vote. Why us? We have the SBA experience. We have the CEFP experience, second to none, on both of those topics. Bond planning. Tenured staff, like I said, 34 years, 30 years, 28 years. Tenured staff, tenured team with our consultants, Tower Engineering and Triad Engineering. Educational market is 90% of what we do. We do this every day. You get the A team. Jim and I are both principals of each of our firms. We're not going to pass this off to somebody else. We'll be involved today. We'll be involved in the ribbon cutting. We'll be involved when, hopefully there's not, but the 11-month walkthrough, if there's an issue in your building, we'll be here and help support you from start to finish. We have time for you. Hopefully in that map you could see where our workload, and I wouldn't be here today if we didn't have time. You know, Charleston's a lovely trip, but I'm not going to to burden myself any more than that if I didn't have the time. So, and lastly, we listen. That's key to everything, is listen to what everybody has to say. Make the building that functions for you. It's not about us. It's about the kids. And we need to do it right. We need to do it based upon the curriculum. We're integrated in the community, the educational community. We're members of all these organizations, support the board, School Boards Association, WVASA, facilities, all of you. We help support all of that in your endeavors. So with that, what have I left out? I haven't heard the timer.
You have 37 seconds.
We are great planners.
You are, I see that.
Do you have any educators on your team? Former educators?
You mean as far as professional educators to help? We do not. We have in the past, and no, we don't. Some counties that we work with from bond issues actually get a promotional expert to come in and do some polling and some things that is kind of a third party, and that's something that you might consider. But a lot of the communities, they focus on getting the right business person to be the spokesperson and get out and spread the word. Isolate the board. Sometimes that's difficult to do. Everybody wants to be in the middle of it. But, you know, sometimes if the board's involved, people will vote against it.
That's 30 seconds.
No, I stopped the timer when they finished their presentation. I did the same for the other group. Their presentation lasts 20, and then if you guys extend it with questions, that's on the board. That's their prerogative.
I have one quick question.
Sure.
On the SBA success slides that you have, you list 400 projects and, for example, 126 high school projects.
I knew somebody was going to do the math. You must be the CPA.
Exactly.
Okay. There's some crossover in whether it's a K-8 or just the classifications of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that myself, and I didn't go back and look at how they all shake down, but yeah.
All right. And then my second question is the next slide, when you say the owner assistant and grant submissions, like for 2017, you have 32%. Does that mean out of all of the SBA success rates, you were part of 32% of those?
Right.
Okay, so it wasn't of everything that you submitted to the SBA that year, you were successful in 32%.
Correct.
That's just your piece of the whole.
Whatever the SBA gave out, we were associated with 32% of those projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Good questions. I do plan on sticking around because I think you all are making a decision tonight. So I'll stick around, and if you have other questions, I'll be around.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
It's a school night, sorry guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent Will. We got this guy ready to help with your thing.
Yes, I'm back. No, that's my twin brother. You can't spell that county next door with a B though.
Grab the raw box and
Thank you, sir.
So you're double dipping.
Triple double dipping.
Working on that.
Where do we stand?
Y'all stand right where I am.
Okay.
As soon as I get this started for you.
Right, well, let's getting set up. We're going to introduce ourselves. We are Crabtree Rorbon Associates. My name is Randy Davis. I'm a principal at the firm. Set?
My name is Rick LeBlanc, Director of Design.
My name's Keith Carper, Senior Project Manager.
Great.
Greg Wellman, CMTA.
Set. You know this guy.
Yeah.
So, understand we have 20 minutes, and there's the 8 questions that you had asked us. We're going to go through a brief introduction and roll through the answers to those questions. Crabtree Rorbon Associates is a full-service firm. We were founded in 1984. We do educational architecture throughout the Mid-Atlantic. We have experience with referendum bond planning and specific experience in West Virginia. We're recognized by a firm both nationally and regionally for the work that we do. I'd say this is where we go and talk about each of our school projects here and related to you. Obviously, it's a little bit too long. When we look at that, we do a lot of educational work. It's over 15 million square feet where we've improved the education for our students, over 23,000 students, and the ability to find money for projects where we're going. Understanding we're looking at CEFP and bond planning. We have experience when you're looking at elementary school projects, middle school projects, and high school projects. There's a lot of different organizations that are involved in school planning, especially when we talk about 21st century learning and how schools are changing. We're involved with the Association for Learning Environments. In fact, Larry Lovato, who's part of the project team, is actually the incoming president for the following year for that organization, as well as sustainability, the AIA, and other disciplines. There's a lot of work that we do. We're architects, we're master planners, we're interior designers, but there's a lot of things we don't do, and we're involved with engineers. One of those is CMTA. You may have seen these slides.
Absolutely. So CMTA, nationwide engineering firm, just focus on the fact that we've got this county surrounded with our offices, with our West Virginia employees, and we're very proud of the economic impact that we've had in this region.
Okay.
A lot of brilliant people. We employ more engineers, I think, than any firm, and so we like to start people at the design level. What our president encourages people to get their PE to make sure that we're bringing very experienced people to our designs throughout the country.
Right. Berkeley.
So this county next door, that's not the word we're supposed to. I'm an Ohio State Buckeye fan. We don't say the state, we just call it the school up north. But there's a county next door that we've had a lot of successful work, and that's an inside joke. Again, we're just very proud of not only the economic impact in that county, but the impact to learning there. The biggest example I will give you is an older school with what the teachers called vacuum cleaners on their roofs. Being able to go in, get those off, get all those systems underground, award-winning, efficient systems in that county. That learning environment is so much better now. We're very proud to be a part of that.
Okay. So one of the questions was talking to experience with SBA, and we're going to reference some of the projects we've recently done. Keith?
There was an extensive set of projects that Preston County Schools, which is North Central West Virginia, had done. It was actually split between multiple architects, and we were fortunate enough to have 3 projects with them. They were all successful. In fact, they all came in on or under budget. And on top of that, some of the surplus funds were actually used toward other projects that were short. There was an overage on those projects, so I guess it worked out in the end, but they were very successful projects we had on or under budget as well as on time.
Yeah, and that's one unique thing that we do as a firm. Doug Rohrbaugh, co-founder of the firm, spent 17 years on the school board, and the one commitment he made to every public educational client is that we guarantee the budget. So that if on bid day any project that we work in comes over that established budget, it's our responsibility to redesign and bring that in on budget. So if I talked about all those stats, I think it's almost $4 billion of educational architecture that we've completed. We've made that guarantee for every project. Talk about availability. We have 70 staff
in 4 different office locations. We have the capacity and the expertise to do this work. We have the project team. They are committed to working with you to engage, go through the CEFP process, and as well as the bond referendum planning. Talked about office location, and I'm kind of moving through this quickly here, but I figure important we'll hit it in the timeline. We have, of the 4 office locations, probably the easiest to get to from here is our corporate headquarters, which is Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, just right up 81, which is 90 miles away. But we have our office in Towson, Maryland, Charlottesville, Virginia, and White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. And kind of wanted to highlight, if we look at the different locations of, I'm going to say regional or, area projects, in the red represents the closer educational projects that we've done. So if we just go north on 81 and we look in Washington County Public Schools at Hagerstown, north of there to Chambersburg, to Greencastle, Antrim, or if we go south to Clark County to in Berryville to the Clark County High School project, or down to Augusta. There's a lot of work that we do in the area, and there's a couple that are highlighted that are both West Virginia projects, and educational projects, and that's the Preston County work. And Rick?
Yeah, you had a question about change orders. So we have a very good quality control process within our office where we have peer review of documents, specifications, technical documents, to make sure that we have a well-coordinated set of documents when we go out to bid. So consequently, our change orders are relatively low. We're generally less than 1% for new construction and 2 to 3% for renovation, historic renovation projects. So we have an extremely good record. Please check with our clients. Change order types as value added, owner requested change orders, unforeseen conditions, and omissions, and then errors. If we make an error and we have to go in and remove work that is a problem due to our error, we pick up that cost and we take responsibility for it. Lead Net Zero, we have a total staff of 12 lead accredited professionals. We have 30 lead certified or registered projects that have been completed or are under construction, and received 23 design awards for projects that we've completed and also obtained funding for. Whether your project is LEED registered and certified or not, we use sustainable design strategies in all of our projects. That's really most important thing. We've learned a lot from doing LEED projects. We bring that to the table on any project that we do. First and foremost, we're looking at energy efficiency for your buildings, making sure we have a good tight envelope and that the materials that we use are sustainable materials in the building. So that's something that's a philosophy of our firm.
And I think that's why I'm here with CRA, because our firm's values align. They value sustainability and energy efficiency and want to bring that to this project. Obviously, we do as well. We've done more than any other firm in the country from an MEP perspective, and we're pretty proud of that. The one thing I would add here, though, is I'm glad you mentioned the point about LEED, because you could design a great building, and we have a lot of great buildings, but I would challenge you to ask this question: how does that building perform? Performance is so much a key. So to a gentleman next door, I won't say that again, he made this quote. He said, "Greg, I'm more interested in performance than I am the glory." He had a great building with the plaque on the wall, but the performance, quite frankly, was not there. And so it's one thing to have the plaque on the wall and have the LEED design and LEED principles, but if it's not performing, I think as taxpayers, that's something that we're very, very concerned about.
So the planning process. This is our slide that really talks about how we take you through this planning process. Number one is visioning, defining what the goals are for the community for this area. Educational visioning, programs. Do you have new programs that you're introducing over the next 10 years? How are you changing your educational program? What are your financial restraints for your area? Development of guiding principles for the district. Is STEM an issue? Are you bringing STEM into your schools? That seems to be something that is certainly taking off in the last 10 years. School size and new programs are all issues that we want to work with you on to establish what your defining the goals are, what your vision is. And then we go through an information gathering process. We analyze all of your buildings. We're looking at developing, evaluating each and every building that you have, looking at the costs for upgrades, for expansion, and meeting your visioning and your guiding principles. We analyze the data and work with you to develop options. What options need to be considered in order to accommodate your vision? Are we looking at additions? Are we looking at renovations? Are we looking at new schools? Are we looking at school consolidation? Everything's on the table at this point, some of which may be attractive, some of which may be very unattractive and difficult. But we need to really explore all of those items and get input from yourselves, the community, and then giving you all the information you need to make decisions and final recommendations and what this conclusion is in option number 5.
Right, and that's the important process we need to go through for planning for this bond referendum, that we need to establish, where your facilities are as far as age and systems and everything else, and develop these options to get to that point, so we have the correct and accurate information moving forward with the bond planning process.
This slide talks about projected student enrollment. Where is it? It seems it's relatively stable in the area. It's not going up or down significantly, but we want to look at historical trends and determine if is that going to be consistent over the next 10 years, or are there issues that come into play that may require an increase or even a decrease in population in your schools, and how you might address those issues.
Yeah, my father-in-law is a resident of Shenandoah Junction, and we were kind of talking a little bit before this, and he tends to talk a little bit, and he's like, well, the population here really hasn't changed, between the Civil War and 1970. I'm going, really? I said, I don't think that's true. And I was actually looking at some of the enrollment data, and actually it hadn't changed that much. Yeah. It was about maybe 6,000 people different in that time frame. Wow. But if you look from 1970 to now, and you look at this area with the transient, population moving from DC and with the MARC train and how everything's happening, I think there were decades with 40% growth. But I think if you look at the last year, I guess there was a slight decline in your student population. I guess some of the thought may be homeschool or where other people are going. It's important to look at that. Because if there are a lot of your students that are going to homeschools, and there are students that we want to attract back to the school district, we need to look at this enrollment trends and analysis and what's happening so we can bring that back in. Is that? This is a slide for Augusta County. They actually were looking at consolidation. And not sure if that's ever on the table here, but looking at where the populations are, we're able to develop a prototype new school concept for them. And that's just a little bit further down 81, a couple of hours there. And actually through the prototype design, save them a significant amount of money.
So standards and metrics, how do your schools compare with the state standards? School size, classroom size, students per classroom. We want to evaluate all that and come up with an analysis for you to see how you rank your schools in comparison. How much space do you have? How's it being used? This is a graphic that's certainly very difficult to see, but what it does is every school is analyzed. We show your existing spaces. We show what the program should be for that particular school, where your deficiencies are in each and every space, and how that deficiency can be resolved, whether it's renovations, additions, or modifications to that particular school to meet the program requirement. Establishing a program early on to make sure we're meeting your requirements for the next 10 years, incorporating whatever is needed for new programs, any growth or change in curriculum needs to be addressed and is identified in these documents. So the next slide shows, this is typical classroom layout that we've all seen, double-loaded quarter with classroom on either side, very early 19th century schools. Today we're looking at more collaborative learning spaces. Furniture plays a huge focus on how students learn now, and developing small group areas, individual research areas, students working together as teams. So all of this can be incorporated into your schools and into your curriculum and made to work sometimes very economically.
Yeah. And I think that's a key question, or key comment there, Rick, is probably the majority of the work that we do are renovation projects. And that's a question a lot is how can we incorporate some of these 21st century learning environments without doing a large construction project, without adding a lot to the budget? And how can we incorporate that into the design?
So budget, we're looking at program first, establishing the vision with you, looking at the building, evaluating all of the buildings and the needs for the building, whether it's the envelope, the roof, the windows, the doors, and all the upgrades that may be needed, and charting all that. Doing the same thing with the site, what site amenities need to be improved upon for each and every school. And then financing, estimating, and coming up with an appropriate estimate. That's so important at this point. Developing a study where your estimates are not on target really can cause you problems in planning in the future. So we pride ourselves in coming up with excellent estimates during the construction, during the study phase, and meeting those budgets during construction. We don't want to provide you with inflated estimates that would cause you to make decisions that would move you in one direction, whereas if you had real cost and good estimating in your study, that would allow you to make another decision and move the district in a different way. Right. We've seen that often. We do a lot of work. We bid a lot of projects. We keep a cost database of all the work that we bid, so we know what construction cost. We feel we're more accurate than most construction managers we work with. They put contingency upon contingency into their estimating and their budgets, and they protect their budgets, so they always come in under budget. Well, our goal is to provide you with an estimate where we're coming in at our budget. We don't inflate our numbers so that we look good in the end. We try to give you real numbers based on the market, based on the locale that we're working, and numbers that you can count on.
So if we're looking at committee engagement, committee and community engagement is such an important part of this process. There are many tools that we use, whether they're web-based surveys, visual listening exercises, design charrettes. These are all tools that we're going to use to really go out to the community, engage their interest. This is an example of visual listening exercise, and we just have students and community and all the stakeholders go up and look at photos and put dots on what they like and don't like. And it's really a tool for us to create conversations of where we want to go with this process. Bond process, last question, so we have 3 minutes to go, so I think we're doing okay. But I think one of the first questions, when we look at this bond process, we do work through the Mid-Atlantic. The majority of the school systems that we work with go through this bond process, and that can be in a variety of different means, whether it's just a Stanton City working with the county administrators and they wanted a new high school. The county administrator said, we're only going to fund $45 million worth of work, and that had to go out and get approved by the voters for that to move forward. To Fairfax County, where they have a complete CIP that they are going out for hundreds of millions of dollars for bond referendums each election cycle. To Pennsylvania, where it's one project. And we're going to go through the process, and there's a certain amount of money that's funded for that one project, and that one project goes through the referendum process. In the history of Pennsylvania, there are only 2 projects that have successfully passed a referendum, and our project is one of those. But the first thing that we need to do as a question is, does the school district have pressing needs? What will the bond issue cost? Can the district afford the bond issue? How has the district performed well with the money that it has? And what's the self-interest of the voter? And these are kind of like the 5 standards of things that we need to figure out during this process and understand as we go through the bond referendum process. And it starts with an informal polling of the community. We're researching on previous voting patterns. We want to talk with all local government to find out what the background is, how things have happened, what's happening within the county that may affect voting performance for these bond referendums. And we need to figure out how we're going to reach out, whether it's community forums, whether it's technology, social media, what's the best platform to get out to everybody and find out that information. There's going to be a variety of informational meetings, and they start very small, that we're going to meet with the school boards, other key stakeholders, and talk about the bigger picture issues as far as, now that we've gone through the study and developed these projects, understanding these projects, what are the key components, what are the key areas, how do we need to use this information to go out and get public approval for these projects. And we understand that in any county there's a wide array of individuals that have different access and different preferred methods of communication. So if we're going around to fire halls and churches and giving presentations there, that's going to hit a different component of people than if we're using online surveys or web-based questions and those kinds of things that we're going to do. We're going to have faculty and student meetings. We want to rouse all these students and the parents that are come out and support this project. You oftentimes can have a vocal minority that's coming out against a bond referendum. Is we need to make sure we're focusing on that other component of the students and parents to come out. And there's a variety of design charrettes, community presentations. And they can be small localized community presentations, so they can be community-wide presentations to get as many people together. So I mentioned the State High project. It was a large, major high school project. It was a $129 million project, which is, one of the largest project that we've done as a firm. They had gone out for this project. They designed it and bid it, and the school board voted it down 10 years prior to this. There was a lot of community angst and support for the right project. So we worked closely with them to develop a project-specific website specifically for this referendum and identify what the correct approach and methodology was to go out to this public. When it was all said and done, we had a 74% approval rating. The last approval rating for the other referendum was just over 50%. So it was a very challenging and long process. I think very comprehensive going out to that entire community, and the superintendent gave us space for it. And I'm 1 minute over. So YCRA, if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. Thank you. Thought I was great shape with 3 minutes and I blew it.
You did great. You did great.
So I heard you say that your founder was on the school board for 17 years?
Yes, he was.
Okay. Do you have other educators on your team?
We do. We have a retired superintendent, Elaine Foliani from Westmoreland County Public Schools in Virginia. So she serves as an educational advocate and supporter and educational planner. I think that's it currently.
Thank you.
So I'm on my foundation for my local school district. Well, now that I'm thinking about it, Tom Crabtree, the other founder, he was on the board at Greenbrier Episcopal, and actually has been involved with the schools down there, and actually involved in that county there with Hope Village, which was after the flood a couple years ago, and actually was the redesign and development of residential housing for all the people that were displaced, that lost their homes, not directly school but local community.
Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you all very much.
And I know we joked about it, but we really are good friends with Berkeley County. We just prefer being the leader as opposed to the follower.
I'm here to make sure that you're the leader.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Sorry for the delays this evening.
Oh, that's okay. We do this a lot, so we're very aware. Thank you. Did you want a copy of the presentation? That'd be great. Okay, thank you very much.
You guys are not.
We're going old school, yeah.
Old school.
Old school with
So, nobody else needs this? I am closing it.
How y'all doing, City? First. Always get here for this first.
Kathy Skinner.
They first.
I'm great. How are you doing?
Nice to meet you, sir.
How are you doing? I'm great. Gary K. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe one here too.
Yes, please.
Adam Tracy.
Yes. They know you.
Yeah, Mark Prosper. Great. Thank you. I'm Tracy.
Hey there.
I'm great.
Hey, nice to meet you. Yes, she is.
some more cards there.
It's because their job is pretty.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
Increasingly so is ours.
You want to go ahead and go in and authorize one past 10:30?
Thank you.
We're not going to go past 10:30. Huh?
You want
bet on it?
I really hate to do this to you guys.
You gonna move them?
I cannot see anything
Where you wanna move?
here.
We can put it on the side.
On the sides here, if you could.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much blocking the whole view of the board. Sorry.
Where's your camera?
There's one back here. The one I'll be using is probably this one over here to show what you guys are doing. I got a couple over here. Thank you.
We'll put this one down.
Yeah.
We'll put this on the bottom. Does that work?
I think so.
We're good.
All right. We can always move them up if you can't see them now. Then we'll switch them around.
Z and M?
Thank you.
Sure.
Job roster.
Want us to jump in? Where's ours now? So yours? Okay. My name's Adam Crayson. I'm an architect and one of the principals at ZMM Architects and Engineers. And joining me is David Ferguson. Dave's an architect and principal of the firm as well. What we've done is we've formatted our presentation to match the questions that you guys have previously prepared. And I stole his copy of this, but I just wanted to share with you. We also, I know this is an oral assessment tonight, right? But we prepared some answers to all those questions as well. So if you wanted to reference something after we leave, we have them all there as well. We've also given you a copy of the boards and just a little more history about ZMM and our history with educational design in the state. ZMM was founded in 1959 in West Virginia. ZMM stands for Zando, Martin, and Milstead. Those are the original three owners of the firm, one engineer and two architects. The firm has generally always been owned by two architects and an engineer at the same time, and we are a full-service design firm. So we have architects, engineers, civil, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, interior designers, construction administrators, all on staff. So typically, we're not dealing with consultants. We're providing all the planning and design-related services in-house. In addition to architecture, we've really made the focus of our practice designing schools in West Virginia. Since 1959, we've designed more than 250 schools throughout the state. And we have pursued some additional education related to the planning and design of schools. Dave is a recognized educational facility professional in REFP, and I'm an accredited learning environment planner in ALEP. So one more set of credentials to add to the end of the thing. But that means that we've really made it a focus to undertake some additional study in the way that we plan and design schools, which we think is really important. So we're going to go through, like I said, right through these, and we'll give you a brief answer and hopefully leave time for questions. If you guys have any questions while we're presenting, feel free to jump in as well. We thought with 20 minutes, we would just leave some boards, keep this as simple as possible, hopefully have some time to interact as well. So the first question was related to success rate for SBA projects. And that's kind of a hard thing to quantify because in our mind, every SBA project we've worked on is successful. So we've obviously, when we've been hired, successfully implemented SBA projects throughout the state. This board actually shows some of the recent projects we've worked on. And we are currently working on SBA projects in Fayette County. We're working on SBA projects in Mercer County. We're working on some flood relief projects in Kanawha County that are also sort of SBA funded. The FEMA money's going through the SBA.
We just finished some SBA projects in Wayne County and Cabell. We're still working on a couple of smaller projects.
And Jackson County as well.
Jackson County as well.
So we included a list in there. We've been involved with the School Building Authority since it was founded in 1989, and we've been designing projects with them since that time. We've been involved with helping them with their policy and procedure manuals.
we've been probably more involved over the last few years as they've gone through some changes, requirements, construction managers, and then getting away from them and some other things, and really trying to help them establish a better path forward for how we design and build schools in the state. We also work regularly with the Department of Education.
Yeah, and currently we're helping them with, they're going through this new CEFP process. I don't know if you know much about it, but it's just starting to change a little bit. There's going to be a whole new outline on how to perform that CEFP process. And hopefully it'll work better for the counties.
That's a goal.
It's a goal.
As I was mentioning, we work regularly with the West Virginia Department of Education. We actually have been responsible the last few years for renovating some of the facilities over in Building 5, so we work with them directly that way. We've also worked with them at Cedar Lakes, West Virginia Schools for the Deaf and the Blind, where we performed the first CEFP that they ever went through just a few years ago. And we've also worked with them on Policy 6200 in various times and helping them write and rewrite that policy, which they're currently in the process of again. Another question was availability as related to ongoing projects. There's a lot of different types of architecture and engineering firms. We are an AE firm. So we have engineers on staff, but those engineers are there just to support our design effort. So we have about 35 people. We always stay between 35 and 40. We have 7 registered architects, 9 professional engineers. In our ongoing work, as we mentioned before, we have projects in design in Kanawha County with the new Clendenin Elementary School, the flood relief project. We have projects in design. We have one in Mercer County that's nearly complete. And then we have the work in Nicholas County, which is, I'm sure you've been following, is kind of tied up. We're not sure when it'll eventually break loose. We have projects in construction in Wood County. We have project construction in Jackson County and in Mercer County. Typically, when we have the opportunity to become involved with a client, they become a long-term client of ours. We think that's because of the services we provide. In Cabell County, we've been working with them for 30-plus years now.
30-plus. Wayne County has been 30-plus.
Yeah.
There's been several counties we continue working.
Right. And in the past, when we've done CEFPs, that's what we've done as well. We've worked with counties where we hope to have the opportunity to develop a long-term relationship, and we'll talk about some of those here in a moment. The next question was office location. We have one office. We're located in Charleston, but we serve the entire state of West Virginia. We have ongoing work in this area right now. We just finished the renovation of the 3rd floor of the St. Margaret's Judicial Annex here in Charlestown. We worked with the county council on that. They had a limited budget. They had about $500,000, and they added a new circuit judge in the area. So they had to figure out how with $500,000 convert that space into a circuit court. So we worked with the county maintenance supervisor, Bill Polk, directly, and it was really almost a design assist. We provided a design, and he bid out small bid packages, and they performed a lot of the work in-house. And we helped them deliver a circuit courtroom for about $500,000, which was significantly under the budget they had originally determined they would need if they put that out to bid. I think we saved more than $500,000 on that project for them. We're also working right now in Martinsburg with the Berkeley County Emergency Ambulance Authority. They have a new building going up on Sioux Court that we designed. It's currently under construction by Myers Building. And we're working with the Jefferson County again on a parking lot restriping project right here in town. So we're up here regularly. The main part of our practice is educational design. And although we're doing some other work up here, we haven't had the opportunity to do schoolwork in this part of the state yet. We've done it all throughout the rest of the state, and we'd really love to have the opportunity to provide those services up here. So, change order process regarding architectural firms' errors. That's an easy one. It's a short answer when you look at the question. If there's an error that causes work to be redone, that's our responsibility, and we pay for it. And we have a history of doing that when those things become an issue. We do a lot of work for the West Virginia Army National Guard as well. We had a project going on a few years ago at Camp Dawson. It's called the Joint Interagency Training and Education Center, the JITEC. It's the only permanently funded Army installation in the state of West Virginia. It was a $100 million training facility, and we had masonry going up, and we missized the beam. It was a $25,000 problem. We wrote a $25,000 check to fix it. It's the right thing to do, and that's what we'll do every time. So if the problems are bigger than that, I mean, that's why companies like ours have insurance, right? Those issues. So.
And you can also talk to the school building authority. My call, I think he's your representative.
He is.
He's very familiar with how we do work and how we deal with those kinds of issues going forward.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think anybody that comes in and says you're going to, I mean, when you're doing design and construction, it's a challenging industry, right? We deal with low bid construction in the state of West Virginia, so we don't have any control over who's going to be doing the construction side. But we're really good at trying to minimize that risk for the county when we get out there. We have a dedicated construction administration staff that we add. Nobody leaves the project. Dave will still be there. I'll still be there working on the project. We add staff, and we have a dedicated construction administrative assistant. We changed this a few years ago. Every bit of correspondence that happens during the construction phase goes through that person. It gets logged. So when a contractor comes back sometimes and says, we've had this issue because of a delay, we keep that information. We don't let the contractor be in charge of it, and it's really helped to facilitate and smooth over issues as they come up. It's a real focus of our practice, as well as the engineering, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. So we think we can help you eliminate that risk. And when things arise where it is our responsibility to take care of a problem, we'll always take care of the problem.
You know, we step up to the plate and take care of it.
So the next one is LEED and Net Zero Schools, which we have this prepared about sustainable schools. We've been involved in sustainable design. I think the first project that we really took a look at it was at Lincoln County High School, which was like 2001. And it was a consolidation of 4 high schools in southern West Virginia. And we proposed for it to be a LEED project and actually bid it with some alternates to be a LEED project that weren't accepted. But we started to look at active daylighting strategies, building orientation, reducing energy consumption. And although it wasn't a LEED school, it was the first school that implemented a lot of those principles in West Virginia. And from that point, we continued to push forward with it. Huntington East Middle School won a Merit Award in 2014 for sustainable design. It is a LEED certified building. The GITEC that I talked about, the training center Camp Dawson, is a LEED Gold project. Edgewood Elementary School, this was an interesting project. This is in Kanawha County. The School Building Authority funded 2 projects for Charleston's west side. It combined 4 schools, actually 5, into 2 new elementary schools. One is Mary C. Snow, which sits on the flat part of the west side, and the other was Edgewood Elementary School. And they funded this as, and I always hated the term, a school of the future, right? Because we can't design schools for the future. We can design them using max technology, what we've got available now. But they wouldn't let it us design to be a LEED school. They didn't provide any additional funding to be a LEED school. But we made it a point to implement sustainable principles into that school. So what we did was we decided not just to design them into the school, but we wanted to make the sustainable features part of the curriculum, something that teachers could use as they're teaching in the school. So we created these signs. We didn't want something that the students would have to stand there and read this big sign. So we created, it's a one-to-one school. They have an iPad. All the students have an iPad. So we put a QR code on these signs. And we said, your school uses natural lighting. And then we created the website so the students can go up, hit that QR code, and direct them to the website so they can learn about how natural lighting or an efficient mechanical system or additional insulation was used in their school. And then we took it a step further and we actually created these kind of teaching manuals for the teachers. So it tied all of the sustainable features of the building to the CSOs that the state is using for an elementary school curriculum to show how it ties to the elementary school curriculum. This is what we did for Edgewood.
Did one for Huntington East.
We did something similar for Huntington East Middle School as well.
Huntington East is a little different. It has 3 wings, 1 through 6th, 7th, and 8th. And each wing has a monitor in each wing. So the kids can, and each wing is also fed off a different source of energy, whether it's solar or gas or electric, so they can compete with each other on energy savings. And they also have, Huntington East has a pulper system to where everything is disposable. All of their food trays, their silverware, everything's disposable.
And recyclable.
And it's recyclable, and it creates mulch. And they use that on their greenhouses on their ag department.
Right. Because they have a big farm-to-table initiative there too, so they use that pulper waste in the farm-to-table initiative, and then they're growing the fruits and vegetables that they're serving at this school.
And then we added an additional pulper that's just for the teachers for all their paper waste, because they generate so much, it actually took their trash bill down to nothing. So they pretty much recycle and reuse everything in the building.
And another thing we did is we partnered with the DEP to fund, several years ago, Green Apple Day of Service mini grants. And what that was a grant up to a couple $1,000s we provided to a school if they would commit to undertaking a Green Apple Day of Service project
documenting it and submitting a lesson plan back to us so that we'd have a resource that we could share in the future with school districts. So that went on for several years. Just some pictures of some of those projects that were implemented there. That was a very effective project as well. So I guess the point is, we look at sustainability. We know there's a focus on reduced energy consumption, but we look at the building more holistically in terms of fresh air for the students, creating a healthy interior environment, access to daylight and views, and reducing maintenance costs, because we know there's a push to look at net zero schools, but there's a lot of things to consider when you do that. It affects the amount of glass you can have in a building. It affects your building envelope. It affects decisions you're going to make about your kitchen, how you serve food, whether you can have a Class 1 hood, whether you can grill food in your kitchen. It determines the type of mechanical system you're going to have. And there's been a lot of push towards using geothermal with heat pumps. Well, 10 years ago, you couldn't put heat pumps in a school in West Virginia because of all the maintenance that was required. So we've been looking at other mechanical systems that you could utilize if you want to get a low energy use school, something that's net zero ready when you can implement the solar, but using some different systems. So we've been looking at geothermal heat pumps. At Clendenin, we're going to be using geothermal variable refrigerant system. You can have variable refrigerant flow with an air-cooled condenser. And the newest thing is they're looking at next generation VAV systems, ducted systems, that can be used with geothermal, that can be used with an efficient chilled water plant, or that you can use with self-contained DX. So I think there's this idea that to get a net zero school, you have to go this one direction. But if we were selected to work with you and you were looking at reducing your energy consumption, which obviously helps you dollar-wise, we would present these variety of options to you and talk about how you want to use the school, what your maintenance people are comfortable maintaining. Because if you save all your money on energy but you spend twice as much on maintenance, what have you really accomplished, right? We want to find out what's best for Jefferson County schools. That's how we would take the approach with a net zero or low energy school. Certainly we would encourage you, and where possible, to consider any of the sustainability initiatives. However, we think all of those things are important, not just reduced energy consumption. When we were working with Kanawha County, they considered at Clendenin a net zero school, and then we got into the design of the school, and with Clendenin, like we did at Edgewood, these aren't traditional classroom pods. They have collaborative space for each grade level, and then smaller classrooms attached to it, so they can break out and work in these collaborative spaces. We're going to do something similar there, so we designed it, but it makes for kind of a linear layout of the school because you're connecting each of these classrooms, kind of plugging them into these collaborative workspaces. So we designed the school they wanted, and I said, okay, now if the goal is to get as low energy as possible, here's the changes we're going to have to make. And what they said was, no, we want this school as efficient as possible. And that's the direction we've taken. We've gone with, we're using the insulated concrete forms, we're using high efficiency systems, we're doing geothermal there, all of those things to make it as low energy, as low cost as possible. I don't want to jump over, I know we want to spend a little bit of time on the bond and CEFP piece of this as well, and we're probably running out of time, but Dave, do you want to talk about the planning process for the CEFP? 4 minutes? Oh, we're good.
Okay, planning process, CEFP. Right now, there's an established, if you go to your policy 6200, or the SBA policy, there's a set process. That's all going to change. And that will probably be implemented in January when they roll out the new system. You're going to basically, whoever you hire, the architects will be going around each building with an iPad or a computer, checking off boxes, looking at all your systems, rating your systems lifespan, when it's going to fail, that sort of thing, and that will automatically attach a cost to that. And then you'll be involved, the planning team here would be involved with your community analysis, your population enrollment could be already established by the school building authority, and a lot of that stuff may be already set up for you to do that. But that process will change in its entirety. It's supposed to make it simpler, better, we hope, and it's also going to work with, if you use School Dude, it's going to wrap all your preventive maintenance all into that. So you'll have a nice big report is what the school building authority is hoping to have. Committee engagement process.
Yeah, I think the most important thing with committee engagement is any effective school planning process requires active committees involved in that and active community engagement. So if you look at the answers we provided in there, there's kind of several steps to that.
first of all, you have to lay out the process in the beginning, and you start by talking about the process that you're going to go through instead of jumping right to solutions. And then you really need to guide that process, because what people tend to want to do is jump right to solutions. Here's what we need, here's what we need. Before you even have the chance to, we all often, especially when we get to bond planning, get everybody on the bus. Everybody knows what their school needs, but they don't know what every other school in the county needs. So part of that active community engagement is getting people out to really take a look at what the entire community needs. And that's typically been a real effective part of the process for us. So we've outlined a bond planning process that we've used. We've successfully helped counties pass 4 bond issues recently. Wood County bond program in 16, Wayne County in 14, Greenbrier County in 2008, and Cabell County in 2005, which at the time was the largest bond program in the state of West Virginia. And in each case, the thing is, and you can see the process, how we go about organizing the committee, planning these field trips. When Dave helped pass the one in Wood County, you spent how many weekends up there?
We spent, and also in Cabell, we spent every, like 5 weeks 5 weekends in a row going on a school bus, taking 90 people around to every building. And basically the purpose of that is so you get to see what his school's like, he gets to see what your school's like. A lot of them, they were eye-openers because they'd never been to those schools. They didn't know that they had severe problems in another school. They were out of touch because they'd never been there. So it opens up the process to the community.
And that's the last thing is we would never come in and say that we can pass a school bond issue for you, because we can't. Your community has to pass a school bond issue. When it comes time to taking that to the voters, the community needs to drive the process. It needs to be a community-led effort. And what we can do is provide the resources, the graphics, the data, the information, all of the things that help that process be successful. But what leads to that effective community-led process is by building out the committees when you're doing the CEFP and then when you get into your bond planning process. It's really all about engaging the community through that process.
And we're there to answer questions, to make tours of the buildings, those kind of things, and help the process along, facilitate everything.
So, I know we only had 20 minutes, so we feel like we're auctioneers, but we did provide more information in those written responses. I hope if you get a chance, you take a minute to go through those, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have with the time we have left.
You have 11 seconds. No, finish your presentation. You finished on time.
We're done.
You guys have any questions for us this evening?
Do you have any former educators on your team?
We don't have any former educators on our team. We are very involved in the educational community in West Virginia. My wife's a teacher. Dave's wife's a school counselor. So this is something we live every day. Yeah. We also are very active participants in the Education Alliance, Philanthropy West Virginia's Education Affinity Group, all of those sort of things. This is really the background of our firm. This is what we do. Any other questions? Thank you for the time this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's all right. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You guys can hold on to those if you want. I think it's a good resource.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I hope you guys can see the board. We can do it again out here.
We'll come out. We'll be right out.
You'll be right out.
Yeah, we'll be right out.
Thank you. Just have a good evening. It was a good crowd. I take it. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.
No, ma'am. We're good.
No comments?
No, ma'am.
All right. Approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the regular meeting held October 22nd and the special work session meeting held October 19th?
So moved.
Second. Any questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Citizens' comments. I'm so sorry. Let's see if anybody is still here. Lori Moss? Okay. And just to remind everybody that you are limited to 3 minutes, and Miss Ogden will be kind enough to be our timekeeper. I would appreciate it.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having me here. I'm kind of winging this. I'm not really prepared, so to speak. But my name's Laurie Moss, and up until a week ago, I was the long-term sub at the art teacher at Shepherdstown Middle School. And I wanted to share with you a couple of things. So first of all, I do want to thank everyone that has helped me along this process. That process meaning just at the end of September, I do have a West Virginia state teaching license. I have a Virginia state teaching license, my mistake. I received West Virginia state reciprocity at the end of September. And the highest degree listed was for a bachelor's degree. So I inquired if I had missed any documents, transcripts, didn't click a box, something like that. I do hold a PhD in immunology and infectious diseases, and the state of West Virginia has decided that my degree is not related to my endorsed area of biology. They are absolutely incorrect. My degree is 100% related to my endorsed field of biology. I volunteered to go through the West Virginia state curriculum and highlight all of the standards that my doctorate degree has covered. I did not receive any response. I also asked Dr. Hagerman what praxis exam I must take to remedy the situation so that I can have my degree be in alignment with my endorsed area. I never received a response. And so I had to resign very painfully, very upsetting, from the position that I had just a week ago because the salary issue could not be resolved. So I'm receiving very conflicting information. So I'm coming here tonight just to let you know my journey. I know I'm speaking quickly because of the 3 minutes, but I did not roll out of bed one day and say, oh, gee, I want to be an educator. I have had a passion for education since I was 10 years old, and someone asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I wanted to be a teacher. So I went my undergraduate career. I actually reserved a whole semester for student teaching, but I went to Gettysburg College. It was a very small school. So the course I needed to graduate from with my major conflicted with the course I needed right before student teaching. So I had the choice to pay for a whole other year just to student teach, which I'm still paying on my undergraduate loans. So I chose to leave early, and again, being a small school, I had a research experience opportunity at Penn State. They liked my work so well that they invited me to come early and kind of convinced me to do their doctorate program. I loved being at the bench. It helped me connect all the things I ever learned in science. It is making me a far better educator than I would have been without that experience. I then decided that I wanted to teach the youngest age I could to get them inspired about science. So I chose middle school, which I know a lot of people run from middle school. I love them. They are energetic and they are crazy, and they, I hope, keep me young in some way, shape, or form, but that's how I view it. I taught for 2 years in Frederick County, Virginia at James Wood Middle School, right next door to some of the lovely buildings I saw earlier tonight. And I loved it. The only downfall was it was too far of a commute for me. And that was the only reason I stepped back from teaching. And so now my concern is that this will plague me and I will never be able to teach in West Virginia, because my certificate will always say bachelor's degree, and I get 0 credit beyond that. So it just kind of goes hand in hand with the earlier presentation on pushing some educators away that really want to be here. So I really do want to be an educator. I'm not just trying to get every penny. And it was a very valuable experience that I hope comes into the classroom.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nancy Gregory.
I got here late and didn't get to sign up. Could I just say 2 minutes or 3 minutes or something?
I'm sorry, we have a
Yeah,
pretty...
I wasn't able to sign up because it was already pulled out there.
Right, the sign-up period ends at 6:45. John Doyle is gone. Dennis Hatcher. David Tad. Jay Mansfield. And Anastasia.
I had to put my name on a piece of scratch paper because there was no forms. Was that
At the end. It's on the bottom of a, what's the grade? Yeah.
So I myself wasn't going to speak this evening, but somebody, Audra Welch, wanted to share this picture board of her son and the type of
life that she lives with him having cancer and the special care that he needs. And so since I knew I was going to be here tonight, I said I would sign up to speak on her behalf to present this to you. And then I'm sure there's some things I could add in there. But, you know, we all are concerned about the air quality and the impact of rock wool. That is what I'm discussing this evening. And this shows you what children have to face and are up against when they, you know, their lungs are impacted. Your involvements with the pilot. I know there's nothing in front of you, no votes to be taken with it and so forth. Early on, I wondered, why are you involved with the pilot? I mean, I understand the taxes and the percentage that comes to you, but why have you sign it? And the only thing I could ever come up with is this false sense of security that having you guys a participant on it gives to others. I mean, there's very little related in the pilot that even is designated for you other than the providing certainty and soundness in the fiscal planning and promoting the present and prospective prosperity, health, happiness, safety. I mean, you all are aware of such. And I wonder when it, you know, came to the time in September when you signed this, if you really, you would know this. But I wonder if you ponder this as I do, how much you really knew. As much as everybody that was lining everything up knew that was going on whenever they were holding, you know, all these agencies are holding meetings in January, which you were not a party to. And, you know, and then they come to you and they come to you in August or September and ask you to sign on to this. If you understood the scope of the amount of industry that is planned for that area. You got this one little snippet of rock wool. And what that allows the county to do is, you know, lay all the infrastructure and so forth. Then that others are coming in afterwards and having the benefit of. And you signing off on rock wool saying, you know, we're okay with this. And now understanding the scope of them as well with their emissions and what they do and the close proximity to the schools and so forth. Because you accept rock wool, those that come that are being planned for later, you know, they're basically filling out a form and the zoning's been done to some degree. We all understand that rock wool is heavy industry. It's a major source of pollution, which was never intended in the zoning. I still don't believe that it encompasses it. When they did the rezoning ordinances, it was specifically stated that a waiver would have to be filed later on for it specifically because it is heavy industry. So I just hope that when you're addressing the pilot with Reed Smith, you know, understandably, maybe there had to be some division with Steptoe and Johnson because when they were representing you at the time of the pilot, they're also representing Jefferson Orchards, and we understand that conflict of interest. So I just hope that you're taking into consideration things that you know now, that you have the foresight to, and make sure that, you know, that wasn't left out purposefully in the beginning.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is it Ilsa Gregg?
I've never been to one of your meetings before. It was really very educational. My son graduated in 2015 from University of Northern Colorado, which was listed on one of your lowest paying states. He came here $10,000 more as a first-year teacher. He's a special education teacher at Musselman Middle School. Sorry for the Berkeley County thing again. But if you recruited from University of Northern Colorado, their situation for their graduates is dismal. You would get plenty. I spent a lot of time on your website, and there's a lot of information about rock wool. And whether you intend it or not, it seems from your website that you're not pro rock wool, that you don't actually want it here. And now seeing, if there was some way that you could extract yourself from the pilot, you would be heroes to all of us. You were having all these presentations about how to get community support for your bonds. How could you not if you saved us all from rock wool? That's all I got.
Thank you.
Are you sure I can speak for 2 minutes? Sorry.
Can I pass off something John Doyle wanted to say?
I just didn't get to sign up. It's about last Monday night's meeting. You were there.
I'm sorry. All right, consent agenda.
There's no changes, but I do want to make a clarification because I think there may have been some confusion. We currently have an open cultural diversity. Sorry, I only get 3 minutes. An open cultural diversity position, and we have looked several times at the job description for that position, and we posted it again for the board's awareness that this job description has been we've edited it with some support and some feedback from the NAACP and things that they would like to see changed in that position. We have no intention of filling that position until we complete our central office reorganization. We have a number of positions that we are currently holding to see how they play into our reorganization. I am meeting with, per the board's direction on my 5 goals, I am meeting with every single department individually, and they are completing reorganization forms where they have to outline certain internal and external things that they need, make any staffing requests, make any material requests. And so all central office positions, we're saying, are going to be part of that reorganization. But this is providing you with feedback on how the job, we changed the job description based on the feedback from the NAACP. So I just want to clarify that. You'll notice that it's not in any of the numbers. It's not on the consent agenda as a position.
Will we be given notice when it is posted again?
Yes. What we will do is we won't post any of those until we come back with a full central office reorg plan. Here's everything that we anticipate changing, or if there are any changes of positions or requests for new positions, or any position that changes more than 50% where we have to riff it and repost it as something new. All of those will come as one package to you.
I'd like to, first of all, thank you for the job description and going through it. I'd like to change it to 261. We just had a position that was hired, 261. I like to stay consistent with that, especially with it being a coordinator position. All the coordinators are 261. And I had actually, I was going to be okay with it being posted.
I guess I'm just getting everybody. That's enough. You only get so much time to speak. I'm going to keep it up.
I was actually okay with it being...
Give somebody a little bit of power and they just go crazy.
Yeah, with it being posted now, even if it's posted now and it says when the start date is later, I would be okay with that. I too had conversations with NAACP members, and the absence of the position for this amount of time is causing some angst, and so I would be okay with it being posted now, but I would like for it to be adjusted to 261 so that we just stay consistent. I don't know if that needs a vote or how you feel about that.
Well, it's not on tonight's consent agenda, so.
Oh, it was on the consent agenda.
The position was not. The job description was in there for you guys to look at.
Right, but it says in the job description, minimum 240, and I'd like for it to say minimum 261, like the information officer position.
My personal thought on the position would be, until we know exactly what the needs are going to be, that I don't know that it's the position written the way we want it to begin with, whether it's for 240 or 260. We have had, we have had, what's the word I'm looking for? An opportunity to look at how the position has been run before. So we know pros and cons of what we think we want and what we don't want, but I still think there's a lot that we don't know about it. I'm also concerned that as of right now, the way that it's written has you as the supervisor. And my own personal opinion is that you would not supervise anything in this office except assistant superintendents, because I think that your workload is extreme as it is. And I don't know how that all is going to flush out, or if we need another person to be hired at some point. We don't know, but I think until we get all of that encompassed and we figure out who's doing what, I think that we've had this position not necessarily covered, but for some reason it has existed. But I think the needs that are being shared and the feedback that we're getting from the NAACP is very, very good, and we understand what they would like to see. We understand that, but we also, I personally would like to know too, long term, what are the schools actually seeing as cultural diversity? Because I don't know if it's a systemic problem that we may have even within the school system, that if they see that if we bring in a cultural group here or we do this here, that all of a sudden we have cultural diversity, when there's really a lot more to that, and data is a huge piece of that, and what exactly are we looking for? I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of other questions that long term, as we're doing the reorganization, need to be answered before. I don't want to say that we like that posting and then that's the one we end up with, because as of right now I would vote no on it only because you supervise it. And so that would be my personal thoughts.
I don't think we can put a number of days on it at this point because we don't know entirely what that individual will be doing totally.
I have a suggestion that somebody make a motion to just remove the job description from the consent agenda, because it sounds like it's still a work in progress. So if somebody would make a motion to remove that, and
I'll
then
make a motion, we remove it from the consent agenda.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
The 240 though, really, that doesn't restrict it from being 261. That just says that's the minimum. Doesn't say it's the maximum.
Right, but the last position that we hired says minimum 261, and when we're communicating with people, I would just like for us to be consistent. In, was it June, we hired 261, now we're in November saying 240. It kind of feels like it's a value, placing a value on the position, and plus, with it being a coordinator of cultural diversity, all of the coordinators should be the same. Just like,
and you're currently they're not. We have 240 coordinators and we have 261 coordinators, so that's something that we would need to address through the central office reorg if we want them all to be comparable.
Yes, I would.
And that's why we probably need to just
right, because if we address one and we've got other coordinators and facilitators at 220, 240, 261, we have folks at several different levels, even with the same job description, as over time everyone was 261, and as we've made cuts at the central office, both when we suffered the 2 mid-year budget cuts and pulling in the funding for the pay raise, we have in the last, of course it's been since I've been here, in the last 3 years, every time we've started making cuts back to folks, and for some of those folks we need to look back and see whether or not we've cut off our nose to spite our face for some of those.
Okay, so do I have a motion for the revised consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now may I have a motion to go past 10:30?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Unfinished business. Action on approval of Jefferson County Schools integrated PE policy.
Yeah, didn't receive any comments from it. The one change which was made upon the board's recommendation prior to going out for posting was to add the marching band with the extracurricular also, so it's an option of either getting through the graded class, the virtual school, or else the non-curricular also. So that's been out on review, and didn't receive any comments from that. Have all support from the from the policy proposal.
So is it in both places now?
Yes, it is. You see on the second page, it's in
Right,
red down.
it's in
That's the
red.
only difference of what you saw that one, the first night it was presented to you, but that was made when it went out on review then, so that on review it was seen with the marching band included.
Okay. So they have their choice of which direction they want to
Exactly.
pursue.
Yep.
All right. So do we have a motion on the approval of the integrated PE policy? Second?
Second.
Discussion or comments? My only comment is that it does say on there the policy effective date is 2018-19, and I guess we need to change that to 1920.
Yes, yeah.
But it would be effective next fall, correct?
Next school year, yes.
Yeah, I think it's that we need to change effective date. I think part of the thinking on that was kids are signing up in 18-19 for their 19-20 classes. So, you know, maybe that was a part of it. But we can, you know, say that it goes into effect 19-20, but the idea was in January, kids are signing up for classes for next year, so.
Right, well, we just have to make sure the correct date's on there, because
Right.
if somebody
Right.
plays baseball this spring and they may think it's
Right.
effective now.
Right. We'll clarify that. Yeah.
And then my other question is, how are we going to get the word of this out? I know it's gonna spread pretty quickly on its own, but we wanna make sure that everybody has the opportunity to know about it.
And correctly.
Right. So, we just
And we
need to make
can
sure we
do
have
that, I
it.
think, through multiple ways, from the webpage, the school's website, the county's website, and we could do paper notifications or PA announcements or paper notifications.
I was just gonna say, we might wanna send out a live grades message to high school and 8th grade students, since it does affect 8th through 11th grade for next year. Just at least telling them, you know, hey, this is now an option, and it could direct them to wherever they need to go to research it more on their own if they need to. And also make sure all of the coaches of the teams know, and band directors and that kind of thing. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Action on recommendation for designation of fiscal year 18 unassigned funds.
I brought copies if anybody needs this. It's the same document from the previous meeting with no changes. I don't think we want to add any recruiting to it, but we certainly could if we wanted to amend it to add some money to it. But if there are any questions, or if anybody wants to see a hard copy.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Second? Gary? Is there a second? Okay.
Publicly too.
What's the problem?
Well, can we at least have a second for discussion purposes, perhaps?
Second.
Thank you. All right. Evidently, we have some discussion or questions or anything?
Is this an all or nothing?
No. Guidance is appreciated.
So I have some. I'm concerned about our enrollment, and next year we're really going to feel it. And so there's a couple of things that I wanted to delete from the budget. It came down to like $204,000. but I mainly wanted this to be posted so that it's not just my opinion.
I'm actually fine with doing that and presenting it at the 11/26 meeting. Apparently, the agenda item got posted, but the actual document didn't get posted, and I apologize for that. However, but prior to posting it, if we would like some guidance, I mean, there are some things, for example, new positions have already been board approved without a funding source.
Without a funding source?
Yes, when they were approved, there was no funding source assigned to them, and at the same time that they were approved, which would be a nicer practice, but for those positions, we are approving, the resource officer. I need to have a funding source for those positions that have been previously approved. And this is typically the mechanism that we use for doing that, particularly when there's no increased enrollment.
So how would we know when a request comes that there's no funding source to it?
There's no line under it that designates a funding source, and there would not be a budget for that funding source.
So when we were asked to approve, like the resource officer and the special education aides,
The thought was that this would be the funding source for it. It was just not adopted at that time.
that's what I'm saying. How will I know when something is being brought that we're going to pretty much be depending on this money to pay for it? And this is just 1 year.
Yes.
I mean, those positions, especially the special education aide, that's ongoing.
I think maybe what it helps is that anything that we add after the beginning of the school year doesn't have a funding source unless we took someone else away. So when you see the special education aides and Ms. Fitzwater puts on there, hey, this person left, so these funds are going towards this position, we only fund every year exactly who we have at the beginning of the year. So kids move in, or we have an opportunity to add a school resource officer that we didn't have before. They weren't in the budget at the beginning of the year. There's something new that we added during the year, and this is the mechanism that the board has always used to fund those positions
And
that come
I
in
can
mid-year,
clarify.
and then we build them into the budget for the following years because now they're part of our staff.
For clarification on this particular request, I don't know exactly. I don't know if Joseph knows. We've probably added 7 special aid positions. It's only funding 3 in this request because the other ones have been funded by decreases. So if there's an increase and a decrease, typically Cindy will have in the notes that the one school student moved out and that this position is now being funded by that. If there's not a funding mechanism, one of 2 avenues after a budget season is usually increased enrollment and or this mechanism for funding it. You could at the time list it, the funding mechanism for it. It would actually say probably fiscal year 18 carryover, or that would be what we would say, and you could approve it at that time. And then I guess I wouldn't have to come and present it because you would be approving it at that time, and that's fine with me too. I kind of compile that data and bring it to the board on behalf of all of the needs in the system. But that would be one way, Mrs. Roper, where we could, at the time of the request, put the funding source down. And you would see it at that point, then you would have it in your head when I came, and I could reference the board meeting if we needed to.
Okay, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments or suggestions?
So, do I need to make a motion to amend the motion that we are not going to?
We would have to vote on the
this
motion
down
and
okay,
vote
we'll
it
do
down.
the other.
Any other questions or comments? All right. All in favor of adopting the recommended carryover supplements?
Aye.
Oppose.
Okay.
So we are adopting these?
By the board, by the vote of the board, yes.
Okay, all right, now oppose.
All right. New business, action on approval of architect firm for CEFP. That we need to move after the executive session. So do I have a motion to go into, go ahead.
Before we go into executive session, this is something that we started at last meeting, and I want to make sure that I follow up on. At the end of every board meeting, the board discusses a lot of things that I wish I had this, or I wish I knew this, or I want you to do this, and it's very helpful for me to be able to clarify and then send an email out to the staff that says, here are the things that the board wants us to do or explore. So let me make sure that I have all of these. Number one, the board has stated that they would like to see the exit data at the end of the year of why people are leaving the system and the classifications of those. You want us to repost the unassigned funds for the public. You've already done the vote on it, but you want to make sure that the public has that. So we will post that up on our website and direct people to it so that they can see that. You want to add to our legislative agenda that we will address with our legislators a request to run open till filled as a category for our position openings. You want us to consider changing our human resources request for staff to include the funding source when we're coming to you for staffing, and we denote at the time what the funding source for those are. You want us to explore creating a generic teacher posting for year-round as a mechanism until we can get some legislative change for keeping those positions open. You want us to provide statistics on the percentage of long-term subs versus the number and percentage of day-to-day subs. You want us to contact our local colleges to post jobs on a biannual basis to catch graduates. You want us to explore creating a local job fair and having a hiring day for individuals so that they can go through all of the process in one place. You want us to create a cost-benefit analysis on the difference between sub-positions versus full-time substitute employees and what that cost differential would be. You want us to pursue a legislative change on our sick leave policy where there's not an inducement for folks to call in the day of. You would like us to pursue a change in code to our classification system so that we could hire potential bus drivers into a employment classification for service that would allow us to hire them as trainees before they moved into the bus driver classification. You want us to explore the cost and some policy structure for exploring an attendance bonus for staff, what that would look like, what the parameters of that would be. You would like us to explore and bring back a recommendation on any recruitment support positions we needed, either full-time, part-time, seasonal, contractual, as part of our central office reorganization. You want us to put out and message the policy changes in live grades to the 8th grade and to our high school cohort. Does that accurately capture all the things from this meeting that you want us to pursue?
I'd like to have more discussion about recruiting substitutes, daily substitutes, without the 72 questionnaire.
Okay, so you want me to add consideration of removing EPI as a sub-requirement.
How long does it take to actually complete that test?
For professionals, they ask that you set aside approximately 40 minutes. of uninterrupted time, good internet connection, and, without the obvious distractions that one would have during a testing opportunity. For service personnel, it's somewhere around 30 minutes.
And
I mean, I don't know. I think if we need to put it on a board agenda to have a discussion about whether we consider removing it or not, I don't know how you think you want to do that, because I don't think you need to spend time, like, what do you, I don't know what you want to research.
I don't know that you want to do that in the middle of the year.
Right,
I'm not necessarily in favor of having that, but I just don't know that we need to jump to a different thing in the middle of the year.
Well, one of the reasons for having that as a service, partially it does give us a lot of data for the, as you stated, for the staff development. It also allows us, when we talked about recruiting from colleges, one of the services that this program offers is that we also link their scores and who stays with us and who doesn't, and we can also link student performance to, and it's not used as an evaluation tool for specific teachers. What it does is say, all of the teachers who scored the highest in this are the ones who got the highest test scores, or all of the teachers who scored the highest in this area all came from this college. So part of it is for us, if we're going to spend, if we only have so much time and energy, and 86% of the folks who come from Marshall are killing it, and 12% of folks are from out of state, Penn State University, I'm not going to go to Penn State. I'm going to go to Marshall. So, there were some thought behind why we did those, and perhaps we finish our first full year of implementation this year, and at the end we bring you back statistical data and information about whether or not we thought it was effective, whether or not it gave us any insight into people's performance. And you can, re-look at the issue then.
So what about the retirees, the people who were with us and retired and want to come back and sub, maybe just at a certain school, maybe the school they worked at, they still have to take that test. And I get wait until, not stopping in the middle of the year, but if we have a problem, and I'm just wondering if we can't alternate some things we've been doing, because I've been told it takes an hour to take the test, and there's a panic because it doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't say how well you did, and then if they don't hear from someone from the board, they're like, oh my gosh, I must have, what I'm saying? So I don't want to add that angst to anyone that's looking for employment and a good candidate. Some people don't test well.
True, and we haven't used that test to reject any candidates.
Yeah,
we
they don't
interview
know
people, and we need to do a better job of explaining it to people and what it's for. It's new, so there's always some anxiety around it. But to your point, maybe we can do a better job of messaging up front, like before the test pops up, explaining, this isn't going to screen you out. We have folks that we've hired. It's not a pass-fail. We have folks that we've hired who had abysmal scores in one area. That's on us to sit down and go, you are a rock star over here. Woo, we really need to work with you right here. And maybe it's just their fear factor that we'll screen somebody out because of their EPI scores, and we haven't.
Right.
We can't afford to.
Right, but that's
just
the
a fear
feeling out there.
Okay, so did everything else accurately capture
The only other thing for me is, looking into doing a job fair or whatnot to have, or, I don't need to go to that length. The point I'm trying to make is clearly what we're doing is not being very successful, and we need to look at other avenues to be more successful. I brought that opportunity up to say that other areas are doing that, and they are being successful by having one day. It doesn't have to be flashy, it just has to be, this is the day. Streamline the process, yeah.
More of an application fair than a job fair.
Correct. I don't need a job fair. An
So
application
you call it a
day.
hiring day,
We
so
will
It's just
help
a
you get through the
hiring
hoops
day.
day.
Yeah, we're gonna help you. There you go. Yeah,
We'll
we're gonna
help you
make
get
the
through the
hoops
hoops
a
day.
little easier to jump through by holding your hand. And not much as I don't necessarily like the
hoops
idea.
day.
we can call it Hoops Day. I made a note, Hoops Day.
There you go. Nice
March
job, Mark.
Madness in
Hoops Day.
November.
But no, it doesn't have to be that.
Okay,
That
Hoops Day.
fanfare.
Gosh, that's fine. No fanfare. Anything else? Thank you.
All right, so do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
All right.
All right.